Chloe's POV. I leaned forward, trying to ease off the stinging pain on my back, but to no avail. Whipped. I had been whipped last night. For what? I don't know, but I never wanted to experience that again. My own dried tears still stuck to my face. Ever since last night, the pet master had tightened my collar, enough that it made breathing a challenge. I couldn't breathe quietly even if I wanted to. I didn't know what I did to deserve it. I've always tried to do what I was told. When it came to the things that I could control, that is. The rest of the pets and I flinched as the lights in the shop suddenly turned on, and the loud boom of the pet master entering from his designated door. Opening time. The rest of the girls scooted back in their cage as the pet master walked by, some whimpering. I just sat there, not wanting the pain to return. My eyes only met with his for a brief second, before I looked away in sheer fear. The day went on as normal, vampires coming and going as they pleased. Some left with pets, while others left with supplies. I tried to make myself look smaller than usual today, letting my red and brushed hair hang in front of my eyes as I stared at the bottom of my cage, not even daring to look at the vampires that were looking at me. The bell rang as yet another vampire entered into the shop, and for some reason, I decided to see what had just walked in. He was tall. He ran his hand through his pompadour-styled black hair and his piercing emerald green eyes scanned the shop. He had a sharp jawline that nicely framed his face. Yet another vampire that could easily show up any human man. "What can I interest you in today?" The slave master spoke to him with his usual lines. I returned my eyes back to the bottom of my cage, still listening to their conversation. It was pretty much the only entertainment I had. "I'm in need of pet," the man said. His voice was low. "Well, sir, I can assure you that we have the finest that this city has to offer. Follow me if you would," the slave master offered. Their footsteps steadily got louder as they inched towards us pets. "Anything particular that you're looking for?" the slave master asked. I shifted my eyes up just enough to see the vampire lazily scanning over every cage. "Not really." I immediately looked back down as our eyes met, a sense of nervousness suddenly crashing over me. His footsteps drew closer to me, making my stomach turn. I didn't want to be bored. I didn't want to be treated like a dog, only to be treated like a snack once he got tired of me. He bent down, meeting my gaze once more. His eyes squinted as he looked over my body. I immediately squirmed to the back of the cage, letting out an exasperated whine as the pain shot throughout my body. The man's eyes widened ever so slightly. "What happened to her?" he questioned. The pet master laughed. Her. That one tends to be a bit of a crybaby when it comes to most things," he mocked. "Well, I guess that's one way to put it." The man stood back up, my gaze following. "So, what's with the lash marks?" he asked. She wouldn't stop crying and it was starting to get annoying, so I gave her something to cry about instead. The pet master responded, looking very pleased with himself. It was quite entertaining, really. The man's eyes furrowed, but only for a second. "Age?" he asked. My eyes widened. He was actually considering buying me. 17. "Who was her breeder?" he asked. Breeders. The vampires who took in the slaves and pets that can't perform their duty. The ones that forced them to conceive a few children before taking the child and killing the parents for their blood. The whole process made me want to curl up and cry. The pet master shook his head. "She doesn't have one. She's a rogue." I was free. I found her and her family roaming the outskirts of the city 5 years ago, so I captured her myself. He finished. He left out the part where he brutally murdered my family and left their bodies to the wolves and vultures. I quickly blinked away the sudden tears and shook the memories from my head, not wanting to get whipped again. The man was silent, apparently thinking over what he was just told. Rogues were a rare case. They were always said to be rebellious and in some cases, dangerous. Apparently I'm a great exception, but doesn't he need to know that? Blood type? He asked. My eyes went wide again. Why the heck does he still want me? B negative. A rarity among blood, so I've been told. And, lucky for her, she has never been bitten, he finished, crossing his arms. Pet masters weren't allowed to drink from what they had in the shop. It was considered unfair to the rest of their race. That's pretty much the only vampiric lore that I agreed with. The man's eyes widened. He bent back down, his eyes meeting with mine. It's like those eyes were staring through my soul. I felt so exposed. Why hasn't anyone bought her yet? He asked. The pet master leaned against the wall, since he has told this so many times. Anxiety. Anxiety? The man looked at the pet master. He nodded. Yep. She hasn't been bought, because people don't want to deal with it. She has had it ever since I can remember. I tossed my head to the side. He acts like it's not his fault. She has these wicked nightmares pretty much every night. It's kind of hilarious once you get used to it. She even is known to start screaming or crying in the middle of her dreams. He finished, laughing silently to himself. The man shifted his gaze back to me. I'll take her, he said. I'm pretty sure my heart just stopped, but at the same time, it started racing. Why did he want me? I don't want to be wanted. My breaths began to speed up as well, the tight collar making it sound like I was gasping for air. Wait, really? The pet master questioned. Why? The man paused for a second before he stood back up, flashing his fangs with a smirk. I like a pet that knows how to scream. I think I'm about to throw up. Fair enough, the pet master said, grabbing an old leash out of the many that were hanging near the cages. I pushed myself impossibly further against the back of the cage, working through the stinking pain as he began to unlock my cage. No. This couldn't be real. I turned my head away as his hand approached me, hoping that this was just another sick nightmare. As soon as he had attached the leash, he practically yanked me out, causing me to become a gasping, shaking mess on the floor, trying desperately to get a decent breath through this forsaken collar. Every move caused pain to ring from my back. Damn it, get up! He yelled. A choked gasp ripped from my throat as he pulled upwards on the leash, not even giving me time to obey his order. I instinctively grabbed and pulled on the leash, trying to make it so I wasn't completely choking. Bad move. The pet master hated it when I tried to do something against him. You little, he mumbled, raising his foot. I tucked my head down, ready to brace for impact. What I wasn't expecting was for the man to take casual a step in between us before the pet master could kick me. I prefer my things to be intact, he said plainly, extending his hand towards him. Both me and the pet master stared at him. The pet master sighed, regaining his business composure. His eyes quickly glanced to the sides, making sure that no one else saw what he did. Right, sorry, sir, he said, placing my leash in the man's hand. Please come with me to the front. With that, the pet master turned on his heels. I stayed there on the floor, trying to process everything. The world was moving too fast. I looked up and shrunk back as I was met with those piercing eyes. He gestured with his head in a let-us-go kind of way and lightly tugged on my leash. I stood up as quickly as I could, not wanting to be choked if he decided to pull harder next time. My legs began to shake as I stood, both from the pain and because of the fact that I hadn't actually used my legs in a while. The man waited until I was steady, noticing my struggle before he started walking. This vampire was weird. The pet master would have just started dragging me if I took that long. It made me uncomfortable. I made my best effort to keep a good amount of distance between us. Enough that the leash had some slack in it, and that there was no question on whether I was walking behind him. I almost ran into him, not realizing that he stopped. "Do you need anything else today?" The pet master said as he gestured to the assortments of collars, leashes, whips, muzzles and countless other things that I didn't want to know the uses of. The man looked down at me before looking at the selection. I avoided eye contact at all costs. "Yeah, I'll take those," he said, pointing at something that I couldn't see. "Excellent choice," the pet master said, retrieving whatever the man asked for. The uncertainty made me shift uncomfortably. "Are you sure that you don't need any whips? You might need it with that one," he said, pointing to me. The man shook his head, making my nerves calm down ever so slightly. "Now, I already have one," the man said. "Never mind." Chloe's POV. I kept that same distance as we walked out of the shop, my leash in one of my new master's hand, and a bag containing who knows what in the other. I squinted my eyes as we stepped outside, the unfamiliar sunlight hitting my eyes and skin for the first time in what felt like forever. I looked at my master as we kept walking, trying to get a good look at him without risking getting yelled at. As if he was sensing my stare, he turned his head. I quickly avoided my gaze, looking down. I've been told that some masters don't even like their pet to look directly at them, and I really didn't want to get hit or whipped, especially after last night. The warm concrete felt nice against my bare feet. The realization hit me, a lot later than it should have. I had a master now. My entire life just changed, well, whatever's left of my life. That uncertainty of that now lies in the hands of the vampire that's holding my neck by a string. Quite literally. He held the authority now to do whatever he wanted with me. He could rip my throat out and drain me of every last drop of blood I have right here and right now. This time, I did run into him when he suddenly stopped. His emerald eyes trapped mine as I began to step back. "I am sorry, master," I nervously sputtered out, only to cover my mouth with my hands as soon as the words came out. I've learned not to speak unless spoken to from the pet master. I squeezed my eyes shut, ready for master to hit me or yank on the leash or something, but he didn't. He did, however, take my wrist in his hand and lead me into the back area of a limo. Most of the vampires traveled like this, the ones in this city did at least. Only specific slaves were chosen to drive them. What I wouldn't do to have that job? I waited until he sat down to take my seat, not wanting to make him unhappy. He gestured for me to sit next to him, and so I did. He set the leash down by me and leaned back, running his hand through his hair as he let out a long sigh. The drive was silent. It made my nerves on edge. I leaned forward, trying once again to ease the pain on my back. Only then did I realize how loud my breaths were. My hand trailed up to the collar that was pressing into my skin. I immediately put my hand back down when I saw master shift his gaze to me. One wrong move and I'm dead. I kept my eyes on the floor, trying not to make him mad. A sharp gasp exited my throat, and I flinched as I felt his hands on my collar. This was weird though. His hands were gentle as he loosened the buckle before removing the collar completely, finally allowing me to get a decent breath. My hands skimmed against the raw skin on my neck where the collar used to be. It was uncomfortable, but dang, I was just happy to have that thing off. I wanted to thank my master, but I didn't know if I should. He was just staring at me, well, my neck. Either the collar make a noticeable mark on my skin, or he's trying to imagine how much he's going to enjoy biting into it. It could be both. You don't talk much, do you? He asked, his voice startling me. I haven't actually talked in about 5 years, so no. Do I have permission? I asked nervously. I just wanted to make sure, so I wouldn't mess up in the future. He paused for a second. To me, yes. He said. That's odd. I met his gaze, those eyes piercing through me once again. I didn't even know what to say. Name? He finally spoke. Pets were never really given names. It has always been up to their master to decide. Whatever you want it to be, Mar. No, he cut me off, making me flinch. He sighed. You were a rogue, right? He asked. I was. I replied shamefully. It was my dad's idea to leave the city in the first place. I didn't even want to leave. So what was your name before you got captured? I blinked at him. It had been so long that I had to think about it for a second. Chloe. I said. He thought my answer over. Chloe. He repeated, like he was tasting it on his tongue. I like it. I didn't know if I should be happy about that or not. Master sighed as the car slowed to a stop, his hands reaching inside of the bag. I shifted my gaze to the window, gawking as I laid eyes on the castle before me. The sun reflected ever so slightly against its many windows and dark bricks. It was just so big. Much bigger than I remember it being as a little girl. I guess a big city to run courses for a big castle full of bloodsuckers to run it. I froze as I turned back around, laying eyes on what Master has in his hands. A collar, and a leash to match. They looked like a matching set, both being icy blue with a golden buckle or clasp. I swallowed hard as his hands began to move closer, shutting my eyes in anticipation. I stayed as still as possible as he wrapped it around my neck, only tightening it to the second hole. Is that loose enough? He asked, causing me to open my eyes. That's it? That was all he was going to tighten it to? I'm pretty sure I could actually fit 2 of my fingers in all the extra space. You are, yeah. I stuttered out. He nodded, clipping the leash onto the clasp before opening the door. I followed him out of the car before he could yank me out. My eyes widened once again as they lit on the very impressive gate that surrounded the castle, and the vampire and slave boy that was guarding it. The slave didn't look any younger than me. Master stopped in front of the gate, meeting eyes with the guard. New pet? The guard asked, looking towards me. Master only nodded. The guard smirked as the slave began to open the large gate. She's a pretty little one. He sneered, making my stomach turn. I swallowed the lump in my throat before following Master through the gates. The slave boy bowed his head as we passed. Welcome home, Sir Nicholas. Chloe's POV. I couldn't keep my eyes from wandering once we entered the castle. It was so much bigger on the inside, large chandeliers here and there, golden window frames with large red curtains, and a high ceiling. We passed a huge room with a large table, which I'm guessing would be the dining room. There were bloodsuckers in every direction, some with pets, some with slaves, some with both. I met eyes with a couple of pets as we made our way down the corridor. They were all dressed so differently. Some had a total set of clothes while some were practically naked. Master didn't seem to care at all about the other vampires glancing his direction, and then at me. It made me nervous. I kept my head down for the rest of the walk, figuring I could look around later. Or maybe I'd be dead by then. After a few turns and a couple sets of spiral stairs later, Master stopped in front of a large door. This hallway was littered with the same doors, one about every 100 or so feet. He placed his thumb on the little black box above the door handle before a small click was heard and he opened the door. I gawked as soon as I stepped foot into the room. It was huge. A large bed stood pressed against the wall, its sheets a dark shade of maroon. On the left was a large window with the same color curtains, following a set of fancy, light grey couches surrounding a glass coffee table. To the right was a large desk, with tons of organized files and papers, and next to that was a very large bookshelf. There were two other doors, smaller than the first one. One, I'm guessing, would be the bathroom, and the other one, maybe a closet? I turned my head to the left again and paused as I saw the thing sitting in the corner. A cage. It didn't look that much bigger than the one I've lived in for the past 5 years. I swallowed the sudden lump in my throat as I spotted the whip, muzzle, and a couple other things that were usually used on pets sitting on top of it. I jumped out of my thoughts as I felt his fingers graze against my neck. My head turned to see him kneeling in front of me so that he was closer to my height. I just watched in a nervous confusion as he slipped the collar from around my neck. My muscles tensed as his fingers began to trace where my old collar used to be, a slight pain radiating from it. We'll have to fix this, his husky voice said, still looking at my neck. I just continued to stare, not knowing what else to do, or what I should do. Fix what? The mark on my neck, or the fact that it hasn't had a set of fangs buried into it before? The later one seemed more logical. He removed his hand from my neck and stood up, making his way over to the desk. I just stood there, unsure of what to do. Dinner is in 30 minutes, so go ahead and take a shower, he said, setting my collar and leash on the desk. You'll have some clothes ready for you by the time you get out. Just set the ones you have on now on the sink. My eyes went wide. I didn't think masters let their pets shower. At least, a lot of the pets here didn't look like they have. You remember how to work a shower, right? He asked, turning his head towards me. I only nodded. It had been a while, but I was sure that I could figure it out. I cautiously made my way towards the bathroom. Master opened the door, gesturing me in. There's a box in there full of things you can use. Come on out when you're done. My eyes furrowed. He was oddly nicer than he was earlier. Maybe not nicer, but just calmer. This whole thing made me skeptical. I opted myself to speak, figuring that he would want me to. I will. Thank you, Master, my quiet voice said. His eyes furrowed this time, causing my nerves to skyrocket. Did I do something wrong? Did he not want me to speak? I thought that earlier he said that I could. Don't call me that when we're in here, he mumbled. I stumbled for words. What would you prefer, Mari? I quickly bit my lip, preventing me from finishing that word. His eyes shifted upward in thought for a few moments in thought. Nico, he said. I mouthed the name after he spoke it. I quickly recalled the slave from the gate calling him Nicholas. I liked Nico better. It seemed to fit him better. Why he wanted me to call him by his name was beyond me, but it was a direct order from my master, so I couldn't refuse. I nodded. Thanks, he said before gently closing the door, leaving me alone in the bathroom. The bathroom, unsurprisingly, was big. A large bath sat against the tall, spacious shower. Across from that was the marble sink and a large mirror. I gasped once I saw my own reflection. My hair was a mess, dirt and dried blood was evident in certain spots of it, not to mention that it hadn't been brushed in a while. My eyes then focused on my face, blue eyes staring back at me. More freckles had spread across my pale nose and cheeks from the last time I remember seeing my face. My face, too, was covered in dirt and dried blood. Pretty much my entire body was. Tender skin was obvious where the old collar used to be, just as I concluded. I didn't even want to look at my back. The ongoing pain that came from it told me that I shouldn't. I looked away with a sigh and spotted the box that Master was talking about, sitting on the floor by the shower. I made my way over to it and began looking through it. It held an assortment of shampoo, conditioner, soap, a brush, a towel, and even some hair ties and pins. I gawked as I pulled out everything. It was just a lot more than I was expecting. I shook my head, trying not to think about it too much. A small whine exited my lips as I began to take off the old, torn gown, the pain in my back screaming at me to stop moving. I sighed once I finally got it off, setting it on the sink like Master told me to before entering into the shower. Setting the shampoo and all the other things on the seat-like thing, I turn on the water. I let out a hiss of pain as the hot water met the lashes on my back, the pain getting stronger. My hands clenched into fists as I bore with the pain, knowing that the water was cleaning out the wounds. I watched as dirt and blood ran down my skin and into the drain. It felt nice, just how I remember it being. As soon as the pain subsided, I lathered my hair with the orange-scented shampoo, followed by the matching conditioner. I scrubbed the honeysuckle-scented soap into my body until I was sure that I had gotten every unclean thing off of my body. I didn't even dare to go anywhere near my back. And with that, I turned the shower off, not wanting to take too long. I wrung out my hair before stepping out. A soft sigh of relief passed my lips as I wrapped myself in the towel. I felt so refreshed, so clean, almost like I had been reborn. It was nice of Master to allow me to shower. I'll have to thank him again. I looked back in the mirror and began brushing through my hair before using one of the hair ties to put it in a quick braid. My eyes widened as I spotted the clothes sitting by the door. When did he even come in here? My face heat up, hoping that he didn't see anything. It's not like I could scold him if he did. He kind of owns me. I made my way over to them and picked them up. A white tank top and some jean shorts, along with a bra and underwear. A pretty big upgrade from the clothes that I used to have. And I was just glad that he wasn't making me walk around naked. I quickly put everything on, despite the discomfort in my back that the bra caused. Since Master gave it to me, I had to wear it. I glanced at myself in the mirror one last time, giving myself a nod of approval before opening the door. Master sat on his bed, one hand behind his head, and the other one holding a packet of papers. His eyes shifted from the papers to me, his eyebrows rising ever so slightly. "Feel better?" he asked, shifting himself into a sitting position so that his legs were off of the bed. I nodded. "Yes, thank you, Nico," I said. He rose from his bed and made his way over to the desk, humming a "You're welcome." "Feel free to use the shower whenever you want," he said, setting the papers neatly on his desk. That skepticism returned once more, but I was oddly happy about that. My stomach turned a bit as he grabbed my collar and kneeled in front of me once more. I shifted my eyes away from him as he wrapped it around my neck, tightening it as much as his did before. The leash ran through his hand as he stood back up. "Dinner is in 5. We should get going," he said. I nodded, looking back towards him as he turned. Keeping my same distance, I followed him out of the room and back into the hall full of bloodsuckers. Chloe's POV. Hundreds of vampires sat around this large wooden table, plates piled high with amazing-smelling food. It only made me hungrier. Each plate had something different on it, probably to match each vampire's specific cravings. I felt bad for the slaves that had to prepare all of this 3 times a day, not to mention filling all of their glasses with blood. Master S looked especially delicious, steak with a side of garlic mashed potatoes, and a big, red apple. I remembered that I used to love when my mother would make mashed potatoes and the apples that she picked from our tree before we ran from the city. The vampires talked among one another as they ate, each one looking astoundingly perfect in every way. Humans often envied vampires for their looks, as did I when I was younger. I stood silently next to Master, as did some of the other slaves and pets. A few vampires kept their pets on their lap, such as the vampire sitting next to Master. Xander is what I came to find out his name was. He seemed to be a good friend of Master's since he is the only one I've seen Master talk to this entire time. I didn't like him. The cynical way he grinned at me the moment he saw me with Master had made me feel terrified ever since we got here, and I'm pretty sure that he noticed. He just gave off a weird vibe, like the kind of vibe that told you that he'll go to any extent to get what he wants, even if it meant kicking a few puppies along the way. Xander's pet, on the other hand, Doe was her name, somehow seemed even more frightened than I was. Not that I could blame her. Her clothes were torn in multiple places, showing numerous parts of her pale skin. Her small body was covered in numerous scars and fang marks. The color of the scars told me that she's been his pet for a while. I felt bad for her. She kept her wide, light brown eyes to the floor, keeping her body tense as her master ate. "It seems like your pet has taken an interest in mine," Xander stated with his smooth, confident voice, brushing his blonde hair from his face. I froze as 3 sets of eyes fell on me. I shrunk back as my pulse started to run wild, shifting my eyes so I was looking straight ahead. "She is probably just overwhelmed," Master replied, slicing a knife through his steak once more. Thankfully, that was enough to shift the conversation away from me. I let out a long sigh of relief, letting my shoulders relax. I silently continued to listen to their conversation. Not soon after did I learn that they apparently worked with one another. In what industry, I wasn't sure yet. I jumped as a small plate was set in front of me by a slave boy. I just eyed over the plate, unsure of what to do. It seemed like a lot of the other pets had the same plate, although not all of them. As soon as one of them began eating, I assumed that it would be safe for me to do the same. The plate was full of green vegetables, sprouts, and what looked like almonds. All being foods that enriched blood. Great. Whatever. Food is food, and it's better than whatever I'd been given for the past 5 years. With that, I slowly started eating. The food wasn't bad, I'll give it that much. My compliments to the chef, I guess. "No food for her today," I heard Master say, drawing my attention back to them. Xander shook his head as Doe's head dropped even more. Only then did I notice that she was one of the pets that didn't get a plate. Nah, she was putting up quite a fight yesterday, so this is her punishment. Well, part of it. He finished with a grin. I swear I saw a shudder run up her back, as a terrified look crossed her face. I paused as soon as the realization came to me. Does that mean that if I mess up, Master won't let me eat? I swallowed the food in my mouth as I began to think this over. A lump formed in my throat at the thought of being starved as a punishment again crossed my mind. I never wanted that to happen again. I couldn't let that happen again. "Now be a good little girl," Xander quietly directed. A small whine came from Doe at the sound of his voice. My eyes widened as Xander placed his hand over her mouth. I then understood why he had her in his lap. Her face contorted in pain and a small, muffled cry came from her as he bit into the back of her shoulder. My breath caught in my throat as I found myself unable to move. A low hum of satisfaction came from Xander's chest, obviously enjoying how she tasted. I wanted to look away, I wanted to run away, I wanted to do something, but I couldn't. I just stood there, horrified. I had forgotten what that looked like, and the sight of it wasn't bringing back pleasant memories. Doe was trying her best to stay still as small, exasperated, breathy whines came from her. Master shifted beside me, causing me to jump out of my daze. My head whipped to him, expecting him to follow what Xander is doing. He was just looking at him, looking unaffected by the whole thing. Of course he doesn't care, why would he? Master's eyes shifted to me for a couple seconds, causing me to shrink back in submission, before he returned his focus to his food. He brought his glass of blood up to his lips, before returning to what he was doing before, like nothing's happened. I shakily pushed my plate of unfinished food away from me and took a small step back. I lost my appetite. Chloe's POV. We made our way back to Master's room in silence. My stomach still felt weird from what happened, and my nerves weren't calming down either. As we came across Master's door, I spotted a woven box sitting in front of it. Master placed the end of my leash in between his teeth before lifting up the box and opening the door. He kicked the door shut as soon as I made my way in. My leash fell to the floor as he walked over to his desk, setting the box down with a sigh. I stood still, watching him as he flipped the box open. Chloe. I stood up straighter at the sound of my name. Yes? My quiet voice replied. Master lifted a small cylindrical container out of the box, examining the label. Come here, he said flatly. I let out a long exhale of preparation before slowly making my way towards him. He continued looking over the container before he set it on the table, shifting his attention to me. I held my breath as he removed my collar, placing that on the desk as well. Take off your shirt and turn around, he commanded, picking up the small container. My face flushed. What? I blurted out, instantly regretting it. I just talked back to my master. If he didn't plan on drinking for me tonight, well, I just gave him a pretty good reason to change his mind. His eyes met mine for a second, making me take a step back. I need to put this stuff on your back if you want it to heal anytime soon, he said plainly, returning his eyes to the container. I just stared him, eyes wide in confusion as I released the tension in my shoulders. His eyes shifted to mine a second time, this time making me comply. I turned my back towards him before slowly lifting my shirt over my head, biting down on my lip in an act to hide the pain. A small pop came from the container behind me as Master knelt down. He was just staring at me, his eyes examining my back as they furrow. Did it look that bad? This too, he said, tugging on my bra straps. My lips formed a thin line. I sighed, knowing that I couldn't really disobey him, and that I'd have to take it off if I wanted my back to feel better. So I did, steadily unclasping the hooks and sliding the fabric off of me, letting my shirt hang over my arms to cover my chest instead. A couple seconds went by and Master still hadn't budged. I turned my head to see him still just looking over my back, like he was trying to figure something out. Mars Nico? I said, trying to figure out what he was doing. How many? His voice was lower than usual. I guess he was trying to count the lashes. My eyes looked to the floor, searching for the answer. I don't know, I whispered, having to replay that memory, I lost count after 11. Master's jaw clenched as he thought over my words. Finally, he scooped some of the substance onto his fingers. "This might sting a little," he said. Little was an understatement. I had to stop myself from jumping away because it felt like he just pressed a hot rod against my skin. I held back the whines that wanted so badly to exit my throat, clenching my shirt in my hands. Instead, I let out a long hiss as I took on the pain. His fingers traced along my back, going over every injury with careful precision. I let out a sigh as I felt his hand leave my skin. The pain was starting to subside, being replaced by a cooling feeling. My body was only able to relax for a second before I felt his fingers trace along my neck, covering the area where my old collar was with the same substance. Instead of stinging, it just oddly tingled, which I was very happy about. He saved me the embarrassment of me turning around and just reached around to get the front of my neck. "Better?" he asked, closing the container and standing back up. I bowed my head slightly. "Yes, thank you," I said, only loud enough. He nodded in response before heading into the bathroom. I still didn't get it, though. "Nico?" I said a bit louder as he entered back into the room, the substance no longer in sight. He turned his head a bit, showing that he was listening. I cleared my throat softly, preparing myself to ask the question. "Why are you helping me?" I asked nervously. When I imagined being a pet back in the shop, it was never like this. It never involved the master tending to my wounds. It was a lot more beating, yelling, and whipping. Then again, I've only been here for a couple hours. But still. Master only glanced at me before beginning to walk over to his supposed closet. Like I said, he spoke, opening the door and taking a couple steps in. I like my things to be intact. I tilted my head, trying to understand what he meant by that. I remember him saying that at the pet shop too. I guess he just doesn't want to own something that's broken. So he could break it himself. A shudder ran up my spine. He walked out of the closet, looking in my direction. "You're tired, right?" he asked. I hesitated before nodding. Exhausted, actually. Being whipped tends to make it a bit difficult to fall asleep, and of course, my nightmares. Right, those. I hope he'll take lightly to them. He cut me out of my thoughts as he began walking towards me with a dark blue shirt in his hands. I skeptically grabbed it as he handed it to me, my other arm still holding my shirt against my chest. "Go ahead and sleep in this, just set your other clothes by my desk," he said before walking back over to the box. I did, as soon as his back was towards me, putting on the shirt and slipping off the jeans, all without the intense pain in my back. The fabric was soft and cool on my skin. The shirt was pretty big on me judging by how it almost reached my knees. Then again, I was pretty short. It must be his judging by the fact that it smelled like him. I sighed as I made my way over to his desk, setting my neatly folded clothes down beside it. I turned just as he pulled a pillow and a folded blanket out of the box, glaring at whatever was at the bottom of it. He sighed, obviously annoyed. "Here, come take this," he said, still glaring at the bottom of the box. I hastily made my way over there, not wanting to make him even more angry than whatever was in the box was, and took the pillow and blanket. The blanket was so soft, and it's been so long since I've actually had one when I slept. "Just set it up wherever you want to sleep," he said. "Wait, or what?" He ran his hand through his hair with another annoyed sigh as he pulled a large stack of papers out of the box. My eyes scanned the room, following Master's orders. I paused once I fixed my gaze on the cage. "Except there," Master added. I looked back at him in confusion. Just sleep on one of the couches or something, he said before collapsing into the desk chair, still looking over the papers. He looked stressed. I still didn't understand, but did what I was told. Making him even more stressed could lead to a bad time for me, and plus, I wasn't going to give up the opportunity to not sleep in a cage. No matter how weird it may be, I was beyond happy to be sleeping on a couch. I set the fluffy pillow onto the couch that faced Master's bed before letting my body melt onto the soft cushions. It had been ages since I felt this many comfortable things instead of a cold metal cage bottom. Though, I knew I couldn't get too comfortable. "Oh yeah, Chloe." He spoke again, causing me to jump. I turned to him as he took something out of his pocket and tossed it to me. I instinctively flinched away, letting it land on the couch beside me. It was the apple from his meal before. I picked it up, eyeing it questionably. "You didn't finish your dinner and I saw you staring at it a couple times," a master said, still staring at his papers, a pen now twirling in his hand. "I don't really care for apples, and plus, you look like you need it." I blinked at him before shifting my gaze down to the fruit in my hand. My mouth was already watering. Thank you," I stuttered out. He hummed a small reply before turning the chair so that it was facing the table. I didn't hesitate, biting down into the juicy fruit. A smile reached my face as the familiar taste reached my tongue for the first time in forever. Even though this whole thing was making me skeptically nervous, I was happy to have been given this. I hurried and finished it off, discarding the core into the waste basket by the coffee table. For the first time in years, I actually felt like I had gotten enough to eat. I curled into the warm blanket as I set my head into the pillow, laying on my side to aid the discomfort in my back. My mind was too busy celebrating about all of this comfort to stress about anything. It felt nice. I didn't even risk saying anything else to Master. He might drink from me in my sleep if I ruin his concentration, or he'll just do that anyways. Either way, I was keeping quiet. Darkness slowly overcame my vision, regardless of me trying to keep my eyes open. Maybe, hopefully, all of this will distract my nightmares. Nico's POV. I sighed as I finally finished reading through those files. The files that Xander should have given me a week ago. Of course, he just stuffed them inside of my delivery box the night before I have to present them to Lord Bronwyn. The chair creaked slightly as I leaned back, running my fingers through my hair. Lord Bronwyn wasn't going to like the fact that the human population in our city had decreased 11% in the last 2 months. And since the winter months are coming soon, it'll probably lead to even more. Less humans equals less blood for us when we collect it. I guess I could just make the humans give us more the next time we go to collect it. It's not like they can say no. I'm sure that Xander won't object, and since we're the only ones in charge during the collection, what we say goes. As long as I get Lord Bronwyn's approval. I set the files in with the others as I stood up. I've been reading through and editing those damn things for too long and I was as hell. I began buttoning my shirt as I made my way over to my closet to change into something more comfortable. I glanced down at my new pet as I went to close the window. As most pets do, she slept curled up in a ball. Typical for pets that have spent their lives in cages. It was different seeing a peaceful look on her face. The rest of the time she just looked like an abused puppy. And for good reason too. She's smart, I'll give her that. She knows she's inferior. Even though her face was peaceful, the tension in her shoulders was still visible. Letting out another sigh, I turned and headed towards my bed. Lord Bronwyn was expecting my report tomorrow evening, and he won't be particularly happy if I don't have all of the facts that he wants. No. Wait, Aria's small voice spoke from behind me. I turned my head towards her, noticing how her features had changed. Her face was no longer peaceful. It held a look of fear, even with her eyes squeezed shut. Her body was even more tense than before as she held a firm grip on the blanket. I had forgotten about her nightmares, but they seemed to be worse than what I had imagined when the pet master told me about them. Please, or she begged, her voice now slightly shaking as well as her body. I'm sorry. Was she crying? A sigh left me once more before I began to make my way back over to her. I should probably wake her up. The last thing I need is for my pet to start screaming while I'm trying to sleep. By the time I got there, she had pushed herself back against the back of the couch, clutching the blanket against her like her life depended on it. Well, I guess that medicine is working enough for her to be able to do that. Chloe, I muttered, kneeling down and reaching my hand towards her arm. She let out a harsh gasp as soon as my hand made contact, her eyes shooting open. A light sleeper, as most pets are. Her breaths were heavy as she slowly pushed herself up on her elbow. She stared at me wide-eyed as a new form of terror showed on her face. Good, she's scared of me. Like I said, she's smart. Chloe's POV. My heart raced as I stared at the vampire in front of me. I had woken up from a nightmare only to meet those eyes as they pierced through me. I didn't even have time to calm down before I started to panic again. He didn't say anything, he was just looking at me. His hair was shaggy as it hung loosely in front of his eyes. He looked tired. Oh God, I woke him up. My mind began to race with how I would be punished for this. Whatever it is, I just hope it's not the whip. Not again. I quickly searched for the right words to say. Master Nico, I'm sorry for waking you. I stuttered nervously. He only blinked at me before standing. You didn't wake me. I was just about to go to sleep. He even sounded tired. I turned my head towards the now closed window, seeing nothing but darkness through the small crack in between the curtains. It had to have been at least a couple hours since I fell asleep. Why was he still awake? Better yet, why wasn't he scolding me? I was obviously doing something in my sleep that brought him out of his way to wake me up for, but he didn't even seem to care. My nerves calmed down as he turned and walked towards his bed. A small shudder ran up my back as I recalled my nightmare. I was so close to being whipped by the pet master again, but master woke me up just before that could happen again. Nico! I spoke again as he got into his bed. HM? I hesitated a bit. Thank you, I started, for waking me. Master paused for a second, his eyes furrowing slightly in thought. Did I say something wrong? He just sighed, rubbing his tired eyes with the ball of his palm. Yeah, is all he replied. With that, he picked up a remote on his bedstand and flipped off the lights. The room enveloped in darkness. It took me a second for my eyes to adjust. I heard the soft movement of blankets shuffling as master got comfortable before it was completely quiet. I let out a long, silent exhale as I quietly relaxed back onto the pillow. My eyes fixed onto the ceiling as I covered myself in the blanket. I couldn't have another nightmare tonight. I might have gotten away unscathed this time, but that's only because I didn't wake him up. He looked really tired, so I'm sure that he needed his sleep and didn't need me ruining it. And if I do? I quickly shook the thought out of my head. My body slowly turned onto its side as I curled up into the blankets. I shouldn't think about it. It's not going to happen. After all, I can't wake him up if I don't go back to sleep. Chloe's POV. Everyone sat in the same place as they did for dinner. The room was filled with a variety of sweet scents coming from the variety of breakfast foods from the vampires' plates. The pets were treated with only a half of a grapefruit and a small slice of toast. Even so, I was grateful for it. Master thankfully looked well rested, and even though I didn't sleep after that little incident, I felt well rested as well. That small amount of sleep that I got was probably more than my usual amount of sleep at the pet shop. Even the pain on my back had eased. All in all, I was pretty relieved with how things had turned out so far today. So, I've been thinking about getting dough branded. Xander spoke. I choked a bit on the last bit of my toast as Doe somehow tensed up even more in his lap. She already seemed to be pretty shaken before, but that sealed the deal. Why? Master asked, like it was the dumbest thing he heard. Xander shrugged. Why not? The branding company is coming into town soon, so I figured that I could take the opportunity. My stomach turned a bit. That's actually the stupidest idea I've ever heard. Master spoke as he took another bite of his cream-filled crepes. I let out a soft sigh of relief at his words. What would you even get branded on her? Xander laughed softly to himself as Doe silently grew more fearful. I was thinking of getting my name going right down her back. I cringed as I imagined what that would feel like. Why don't you just tattoo that on her? Master asked. Tattoos are boring and less entertaining to watch. He sipped at his drink that oddly wasn't blood. Did you know that they actually have to tie the pets down before they brand them? It's fun as hell to watch. Doe was shaking in absolute fear as she hid her terrified face behind her short, brown hair. Master seemed to think that the whole thing was stupid, so I relaxed a little. Even as selfish as that may seem, I'm glad that I wasn't her. I guess. Have fun with that. Master sighed. You should do it with me. Xander invited. I'd rather not. Xander's shoulders slumped. Why? Brands are ugly, and I really don't want my pet to be immobile for a week. Master said as he sipped his glass. Xander pouted his lips out like a child as his eyes narrowed. Well, who else am I gonna get to go with me? He proclaimed. Master sighed. If you're so persistent on going, then I'm sure Layla would be more than happy to go, he presented. She'd probably want to get some floral shit branded onto her pet's back. Xander rose a brow. You know her pet is dead, right? Master paused mid-sip, slowly setting his glass back on the table. How? He asked. Xander leaned back in his seat, linking an arm around Doe so that she was forced to lean back with him. Layla sucked her dry a couple nights ago. She told me that she was bored with how her pet acted. Well, there goes my appetite once again. Master's finger tapped against the table a few times before he spoke. Okay, so it wasn't my fault, he concluded. I turned my head towards Master questionably. They didn't even care that her pet was killed. They just acted as if she was just some stupid pet fish. Xander shook his head. Nah, she probably would have been on your case if it was. Master scoffed. If she was bored of her pet, then I don't see why it matters. I should be on her case for wasting my medical supplies on a pet she didn't even want. Xander laughed a little at that even though Master's voice was completely serious. Master took the last bite of his crepes. She probably knows better than to mess with you anyways. Xander added. My eyes widened a tad at this. Master finished off the blood in his glass with a satisfied exhale. Probably, he pushed his chair back a bit and stood up, causing me to stand straighter. Even so, she'd probably still go with you. She'd probably like to watch. I couldn't help but feel bad for Do. She just had to sit and listen to all of this. I'll ask. Where are you going so soon? Master glanced down at him as he fiddled with the fabric of my leash with his thumb. I have to review some documents again before tonight, he responded. Oh yeah, don't you have that meeting with the Lord? I nearly missed the quick glare that Master sent to him. Yeah, is all he said before he walked away. I followed silently behind him, keeping my usual distance. I've been trying to link together their conversation to find out more about my master, but not a lot has really been clarified. I'm just glad that he didn't want to brand me. You didn't eat a lot, he said to me as soon as we were out of the dining hall, causing me to flinch. His voice wasn't necessarily mad, but it wasn't pleased either. I didn't even get to touch the grapefruit before I lost my appetite. I hurriedly tried to come up with something to say. I stuttered as I tried to answer him. Master sighed, making me even more nervous. I'm not mad, Chloe. His voice still held that odd tone. You'll just heal faster if you eat what's given to you. I shifted my gaze to the floor as we continued walking. I'm not sure if I even want to heal faster, in fear of what he'll do to me once I do. I see. My apologies, Master. Chloe's POV. I stared down at the city that I once lived in from my place on Master's windowsill, holding one of its pillows against my body as I watched the moon take over the sky. Master dropped me off after dinner, leaving me to my own accord. He told me I could do whatever I wanted while he was gone as long as I didn't break anything or disorganize his workspace. He said something about a meeting with Lord Bronwyn. Luckily, he decided not to take me with him. Lord Bronwyn has been the lord of this city even before my parents were born, and I really didn't want to have to meet him. Master probably knew that I would have been a nervous wreck if he made me go with him. I jumped as the door flew open. Pat! Master yelled as he stomped into the room, slamming the door behind him. My eyes went wide as he spoke. He has never called me that before. His footsteps echoed through the room as he stormed towards his desk. His body was tense as his eyes searched the room. I shrunk back as soon as his eyes met with mine, holding the pillow closer as if it would protect me from anything. Why, yes. I could tell that he was mad. It was written all over his face. That and a bit of annoyance. Apparently the meeting didn't go very well. He sat down into his desk chair as his fingers drummed against the armrest. Come here, he commanded, his emerald eyes trapping mine. A new kind of fear rushed through my body as I froze in place for a second. I tried to mentally prepare myself for what he would do to me. Angry masters usually lead to damaged pets. Still, I followed his order, slowly pushing myself off of the windowsill and taking quick steps towards him. He held a slight glare as he watched my movements, like he was waiting for me to do something wrong. He continued his stare as I stood in front of him. A squeal escaped me when I felt his hands on my waist before I found myself sitting on his lap. His grip was tight even though he was only holding me for a split second. A list of possible outcomes of what would happen to me flew through my head as I sat back against his hard chest. Even when sitting, he still towered over me. Master grumbled lowly to himself as the chair turned towards the desk. He hunched down so that his head sat near my shoulder, dangerously close to my neck. I couldn't move away. I swallowed the sudden lump in my throat, clenching my hands into fists in an act to stop myself from shaking. My mouth was too dry to say anything. What would I even say? I flinched back as he began shuffling through the organized papers on his desk. He would pick up a certain paper and place it in a certain file. Some would find their way into the trash. My stomach turned when he paused on a specific pile of papers, a certain page sticking out from the others. "What's this?" he asked, sitting up straight as he dragged the paper out from under the others. His voice was oddly calmer, yet it was still evident that he was angry. I tensed as he lifted the paper up, showing the large sketch of a dream catcher. I told myself earlier that I would hide that after I got out of the shower. He peered his head down for an answer. "I'm sorry," I blurted. "I should have asked you first before I drew on it. It was a blank piece of paper, so I just assume." I cut myself off. I've learned that excuses never work. They only make the person angrier. I was a bit surprised to see that Master was actually admiring it. "You drew this?" he asked. His voice had calmed down. I nodded slowly. His eyes trailed down to each of the feathers and beads. "Where did you learn how to draw like this?" My eyes widened at his sudden interest. He even seem to be mad about it. "Too. I am." I cleared my throat, placing my hands on my lap. "I wanted to be a tattoo artist, so I've been drawing for a while," I admitted quietly. He shifted his eyes from the paper, looking at me questioningly. "You? A tattoo artist?" I know that it sounded weird. A short little redhead wanting to be a tattoo artist even as a little girl. Even my parents thought weirdly of the idea when I first introduced it to them. Then again, I was only 6. I nodded. Master dropped the subject, focusing back on the drawing. It was odd having someone interested in my work, especially him. I've been out of practice ever since I got captured, so that's why the drawing is a bit rough. I stuttered, looking down nervously. Again he looked down at me. "You think that this looks rough?" he asked. He obviously disagreed with me. I involuntarily shrunk back a bit. For most people's standards, no, but I know that I've set my own standards when it comes to drawing pretty high. I know that with all of those uneven lines and certain edges that I still need to smoothen out, I'd never feel confident enough to put that on someone's body. "A little," I replied, not wanting to totally disagree with him. He hummed a bit as he sat the paper back onto his desk, staring down at it. "How so?" he asked. My eyes went wide for a moment. "Well, I carefully scooted forward so that I could reach the paper. I pointed to the main part of the dream catcher, tracing my finger around it. This part needs to be a bit smoother. And I pointed to the center feather. I'd like this to be a bit bigger. I drew my hand back, leaning back ever so slightly. Plus I need to add some shading. I finished. Master's eyes were narrowed as he lifted up the paper. "Do you plan on doing that?" he asked. I glanced up at him, switching between the paper and him. "Yes," I said. I jumped a bit as the chair rolled back away from the desk. Master set the paper in my lap, as well as one of his many pencils. "Do it then," he stated. I eyed him questioningly. He was ordering me to draw? "And now?" I asked, grabbing the items. He nodded before lifting me up from under my arms and placing me beside the chair. "It'll give you something to do while I finish what I have to do." He soon returned to where he sat at his desk, continuing what he was doing before. I stared at him for a bit as he gazed over the papers. He was so angry just a minute ago. I sighed silently as I sat in front of the coffee table, setting the pencil and paper on it. At least I got away unscathed. Chloe's POV. I keep becoming more and more impressed at each meal. I just found it amazing that the slaves could make this much food 3 times a day, even for his pets as well. I couldn't quite tell what Master had on his plate, but it smelled delicious. Everything smelled delicious. I had already finished my dinner, figuring that it would be a good way to please Master. It was only a small portion of salmon cooked in olive oil, so it was easy to eat quickly before I could somehow lose my appetite. Yet again, a food that's good for blood. Master had decided to keep me on his lap this time. For what reason, I'm not sure, but I'm hoping that it wasn't the same reason Xander keeps dough on his. So far, it hasn't. Master had just been drinking from the blood in his glass instead of drinking from me. He is bound to drink from me eventually, right? I quickly shook the thought from my head, hurriedly finding something else to focus on. My eyes shifted over to dough. Xander had finally decided to let her eat. I was getting a bit worried about her. This tastes weird to me, Master said plainly. Xander looked over at him. You've already eaten half of it and you're just now noticing that it tastes weird? Master shrugged, cutting a large piece from his meal and lifting it with his fork. It didn't taste weird until just now, Master stated. Did one of the slaves try to poison it or something? Can vampires even be poisoned? Chloe. I sat up straighter at the sound of my name. Turning my head up a bit, I spoke. Yes, Master. My eyes widened a bit as he held the fork in front of my face. Try this and tell me if it tastes weird to you. He wanted me to try some of his meal? I haven't seen any of the other pets do that. What if it really is poisoned? Regardless of that, I obeyed. I have no idea how anyone could think that this tasted weird. It was quite possibly the best thing I've tasted in a long time. The different flavors danced around my tongue as I chewed it slowly, savoring it like it was the last meal I'll ever have. Master was looking down at me, an eyebrow raised as he waited for a response. I reluctantly swallowed it, not wanting to make him wait any longer. Everything tastes fine to me, Master. It was more than just fine, it was amazing. If that tasted weird, then I can't even imagine what it was supposed to taste like. Master just hummed a response. Why didn't you just let me try it? Xander asked. That didn't even occur to me. Why would he choose his pet to try something over his friend? I don't know where you've been. Master replied plainly. Did you just call me dirty? Master paused, turning his head towards Xander. Yes. I had to keep myself from smirking. Xander had a fake look of despair on his face. I'm offended. He grumbled. Master took another bite of his food, peering at Xander from the corner of his eye. Good. Tilder. I still haven't gotten used to the amount of stairs that we needed to go up in order to get to Master's room. Nor had I gotten used to the complete silence between us as we walked there. It always made me nervous, like it was building up some sort of anticipation. A blood-curdling scream rang throughout the hallway as we approached the door to Master's room, causing me to stop dead in my tracks. I watched as a blonde pet bolted her way down the hallway, a smirking vampire a little ways behind her. She wasn't wearing a collar. The vampire took leisurely steps towards her as she ran away, like a lion stalking its next victim. My eyes followed her as she ran past us. My heart sank a bit. She couldn't outrun him, even she should know that. The vampire became a blur before he was right in front of the girl, forcing her into a skidding halt. He grabbed her frail, shaking body by her arm, his smirk growing more menacing as his fangs came into view. She didn't even have time to beg before the vampire sank his teeth into her neck, earning another high-pitched scream. I just stood there, horrified. I've seen that girl before, and that was not her master. I looked towards my master as if he would help the girl. He just glanced back at them like this was a common occurrence as he opened the door. I tried to walk in with him, but my legs wouldn't move. I was too scared to move even though I wasn't even the one getting hurt. It was like I would become the vampire's next victim if I brought any attention to myself. This was a wake-up call, reminding me about the monsters that I'm surrounded by. I jumped as Master grabbed my wrist, guiding me inside. The girl's cries cut off as soon as the door closed. Master just stared down at me for a while before kneeling. I flinched as he clipped my leash. I was terrified all over again despite his gentle touch. Somehow, I found my voice. That wasn't her Master. His eyes shifted from my collar to me before he stood up. Yeah, I know, he sighed. That happens a lot more than you'd think. I swallowed the lump in my throat as he made his way over to his desk. Why was she out there? I asked. Master leaned back against the desk so he was almost sitting on it, placing the leash down in the process. It's a stupid thing that some vampires do when their pet has misbehaved or they decide that they don't want them anymore. My eyes widened. They take their pets' collars off and throw them out into the halls once the moon rises. From there, the pet is pretty much free picking to any passing vampire that decides they want a midnight snack. On the off chance that the pet survives the night, their master takes them back. Some just do it to see if their pet could survive. He finished. So it was all just some sick game? Humans are just something that you can just throw out to die. I don't know why hearing that surprised me so much. Vampires are cruel creatures. Why would they even care at all about the lives of the inferior? I'm just glad about the semi-annoyed tone in Master's voice as he explained it. Tilder. I hadn't said a word since that incident. I was too afraid to. Master hasn't said anything either. He was just sitting at his desk. He always seemed to be busy whenever we were in here, sitting at his desk and flipping through papers. I don't think I've seen him take a break unless it was for food or to take a shower. He even went to bed extremely late last night and seemed to be quite stressed. I almost felt bad for him. I'm curious to see what he actually does, but there's no way I was going to ask him anytime soon. I jumped as a soft knock came from the door. Master glanced from the door, sighing from annoyance before returning to what he was doing. The knock came again, louder this time. He groaned as he stood from his chair, stomping his way to the door. This is the exact reason I stayed on the other side of the room while he was working. A young slave boy came into view as he threw open the door. He was fancily dressed, showing that he worked for the castle. What do you want? Master asked harshly. Sir Vanderwood, the boy gave a slight bow. Lord Bronwyn has requested that you met with him in his office as soon as possible. Master's eyes narrowed. He obviously didn't like the idea of that. Why? He did not say, the boy replied, but he did instruct that you bring your pet as well. Miko's POV. I stared down at the slave boy. The one who not only told me that I had to go see Lord Bronwyn again, but that I had to take Chloe with me as well. I hadn't noticed that my grip had substantially tightened on the door until the slave's eyes flickered to my hand for a short moment. Will do. I shut the door before he could say anything else. Why the hell would he need to see me again? And with my pet? I literally met with him last night. It's not like he hasn't piled me with enough work already. I turned to see Chloe wide-eyed on the couch. Her breaths had already sped up enough for me to know that she was panicking if her nails digging into the couch didn't tell me anything. This is exactly why I didn't want to take her in the first place. I sighed as I made my way over to the desk to retrieve her leash. Chloe, I said in an act to grab her attention. It was successful. except that her terrified expression had now shifted to me. She shrunk back deeper into the couch as I lifted her leash into my hands. What does he want with me? She stuttered. Her voice was quiet enough that I don't think a human could have heard it. I shrugged, taking a couple steps towards her. I have no idea, but I want to get this over with as soon as possible, so come here. She did, eventually. It probably would have been faster if I went to her, but oh well. Her trembling became more apparent as she stepped closer to me. I'm surprised she could even walk. She kept her eyes to the ground as I attached her leash and headed towards the door. Tilder. I pretty much had to drag Chloe up to the Lord's room. She didn't even dare look up as I approached the large double doors guarded by two of the Lord's favorite ego-filled guards. I stopped right in front of the guards, waiting for them to let me in. They both glanced at Chloe for a moment before focusing on me. State your business, Nicholas. The one on the left barked. I rolled my eyes. This guy always pissed me off. I really didn't want to deal with this right now. Your guess is as good as mine, buddy. The one on the left glared at me while the other one smirked a bit in amusement. The Lord sent for him like 5 minutes ago, idiot. He said. The one on the left huffed as he leaned back against the wall. What the hell could Lord Bronwyn want with you 2 days in a row? Did I not already tell him that I didn't know? I gave the leash a slight tug, signaling Chloe that we were about to start walking. I don't know. I made my way towards the door, setting my hand upon it to let myself in, and maybe he realized how incompetent you are and needed someone to actually get something done. I barely heard a low growl from my left before I let myself into the Lord's chambers. Chloe let out a sharp gasp as the door slammed shut. I sighed quietly to myself as I was met with Lord Bronwyn's shit-eating grin and his golden eyes. They were pretty much the only bright thing in this room, since he preferred to live in the darkness. Due to that, Chloe's human eyes probably couldn't see more than a few feet in front of her. That would probably freak her out even more, and even more so because she could only see the Lord's eyes. That is, if she even decided to look up. Lord Bronwyn's chuckle echoed through the room from his throne that sat upon a couple stairs. It's so nice to see you again, Sir Vanderwood. He spoke. His smooth, deep voice was already laced with confidence. Fantastic. What do you want? I questioned. God, I really don't want to be here again. He just chuckled again, leaning forward a bit on his throne. Now, is that any way to talk to your lord? He cocked his head. On normal occasion, no, but I really didn't plan on faking formality 2 days in a row. I cleared my throat a bit. My apologies, my lord, I gave a small bow, hoping that Chloe would get the idea and give one as well. What can I do for you? He was pleased with my new response, amused even. He hummed a bit as he reached for a file sitting on the small desk beside him. Well, I see that you finally decided to get yourself another pet since your last one passed. Really? This is what he wanted to talk to me about? I nodded. His lips peeked into a smirk as his eyes strayed from mine. Well, let her take a couple steps forward. I want to see her. His voice was menacing. I blinked at him as I felt Chloe begin to tremble again through her leash. God, that's a terrible idea. Still, I turned my head back, meeting her gaze as I tugged forward on her leash. Her face alone showed how scared she was. Even her eyes were begging me to get her out of this. Well, I didn't want to be here either, so she had to deal with this with me. It took another tug on the leash to get her to move. She looked back to the floor as she began, her hands intertwined at her hips in a futile act to stop them from shaking. Even her small steps echoed through the large room. I tugged lightly back on the leash once she was a couple feet in front of me, signaling her to stop. Lord Bronwyn looked her over, his eyes narrowed. She didn't even dare look up. His eyes then shifted to the file as he opened it up. Well, her records came in today. He started. I rose a brow. Usually the pet's records were supposed to be delivered directly to Thier Masters. Were you aware that you purchased a rogue, Nicholas? His voice was suddenly low. I froze for a second. I'd be lying if I said that it didn't slip my mind. She doesn't act like one at all. She acted like the complete opposite, actually. I responded. Chloe visibly tensed even more. Lord Bronwyn's confident smile had been replaced with a glare, now focusing on Chloe. Great. Interesting. He uncrossed his legs as he leaned back. Has she? He paused for a moment trying to find the right words to say. Paid for that yet? My eyes narrowed, knowing exactly what he meant. It was less of a question and more of a challenge for me to say no. My grip tightened on the leash. I forgot how much he despised rogues. He believed that SES created the most perfect city, and any human that decided against that and tried to run from his rule would be executed. For rogues, it was kill on sight. Yet somehow Chloe won the favor of the pet master. No. He wasn't pleased with my answer, to say the least. I see. His finger drummed against the armrest. Have you fed from her yet? I sighed. Did he seriously call me up here just to tell me how to discipline my pet? This is a waste of my time. No. Why? I noted the icy blue eyes that glanced back at me after the question was asked. Because I've been waiting for her to heal. Lord Bronwyn rose a brow at this. I continued, blood tastes the best when the host is in good health. It also took longer for a human to heal if they're fed from, but I didn't need to say that out loud. He'd think that I was trying to make excuses instead of stating facts. So you haven't given her any form of punishment? He was clearly annoyed. Nope. What I wasn't expecting was his smile to briskly return to his face. He had a plan. And judging by his face, it wasn't going to be fun. Well, he clasped his hands together. That changes today. He stated cynically. A small whimper came from Chloe as she had to stop herself from taking a step back. It was my turn to glare this time. This whole thing was ridiculous. She's my pet, and yet he felt the need to tell me what I needed to do with her. I would punish her if she did anything wrong. From my understanding, she wasn't even old enough to decide whether or not she wanted to leave the city or not when she left. I let out a long sigh. What would you suggest, my lord? I figured that I wasn't going to get out of this until I gave the sadistic bastard what he wanted. His smirk grew, showing one of his fangs. Class 3 hemorrhage. Nico's POV. I had to fight back the growl that threatened to leave my throat as I stepped forward. So you want me to kill her? I barked. I could hear Chloe's breath hitch as she took a small step back. Lord Bronwyn only smirked. You want to kill her if you do it right. I tisked. Doing it right isn't what I'm worried about. I'm perfectly capable of doing right, but Chloe isn't capable of surviving it. In order for me to pull off a class 3 hemorrhage without killing her, the blood in her body would have to be going at a regular pace to begin with. Knowing Chloe, I'm fully aware that that is not the case for her right now. And killing her was not something that I had planned for a while. I refuse. I stated. I didn't spend good money on a pet just to kill it a couple days later. Lord Bronwyn's eyes narrowed as some of the tension left Chloe's shoulders. Why? Chloe flinched as I placed my hand on her back, preventing her from stepping further back. Great, now I have to come up with some bullshit excuse. He wouldn't like my actual reasons. I have no intention of drinking from a live host until the blood moon, I stated. Lord Bronwyn kept his gaze on me as silence enveloped the room, save for Chloe's shaky deep breaths. I see, he hissed before his smirk quickly returned to his face. He then let me retrieve one of my guards. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to do it. A growl did escape my throat this time as I felt myself tense up. There's no way in hell I'm going to let anyone touch my pet. Lord Bronwyn stood, making a move to go get one of the guards outside. Wait. I spoke. Lord Bronwyn stopped where he was, a pleased smirk residing on his face. Chloe hesitantly glanced up at me, pure fear and regret evident on her face. Yes? Lord Bronwyn asked as he stepped back towards his throne. I glared at him as he sat back down, like he already knew what I was about to say. I'll do it. Any tension that had left Chloe's body just returned in the blink of an eye. Lord Bronwyn leaned his head onto his hand as his elbow rested on the armrest. Get on with it then. He chimed. I glanced down at Chloe. Her eyes seemed to be glued to the ground as her entire body trembled in fear. My tongue grazed against my fangs as I let out a sigh. This is going to suck, for her especially. It's already bad enough that her first bite will be this extreme. I planned on taking the whole feeding from her thing slower for her. It takes trust in order to have a fairly decent pet. And yet she might not even live through this given her current condition. Chloe. I noticed the tear that ran down her face as she fearfully turned her head towards me. At this point, she may as well be having a panic attack. She sure looked like she was. I chewed the inside of my bottom lip a bit. Perhaps I could use that to my advantage. I knelt down onto one knee, turning Chloe's body towards my own. Her eyes were begging me not to as I tucked her hair behind her shoulders, exposing her pale neck. Lord Bronwyn probably would have made me take from her neck anyways. I sighed as I scanned over her neck, trying to decide which vein or artery would make this be over sooner. The carotid artery would probably be my best bet given the current situation. Chloe's eyes squeezed shut as I pulled her right up against me, causing more tears to fall down her face. Feeling her body tremble against mine made me feel even worse about this. Punishing pets when they've done absolutely nothing wrong wasn't really my thing. I turned my head up to Lord Bronwyn, eyes arrowing at his huge grin. Chloe's hands gripped my shirt, her eyes shooting open as my hand found its way into her hair, turning her head to expose more of her neck. A typical reaction amongst pets. I leaned forward, locating the artery between her earlobe and collarbone with my teeth as my other arm hooked around her back. Both her pulse and her breaths began racing to an all-time high as I settled partially under her jaw, fangs pressing against her neck. Her choked cry filled my ears as my fangs pierced into her skin. She probably would have screamed if her circumstances were different. Her grip tightened on my shirt as I shifted forward, allowing her blood a place to escape. I couldn't stop the purr resonating from my chest as her blood first hit my tongue, nor the hum of pleasure that races through one's body when taking from a live host. B negative was famously known for its sweetness, but hers held something else with it. It was perfectly sweet, but it was almost tart as well. Needless to say, it was amazing. Killing her now would be a waste of good blood. I held her tighter, trying to hold her still as she involuntarily began to squirm away from the pain, her cries of agony sounding here and there. There's no way she would have tried to get away on purpose. She is smarter than that. Then again, she is probably convinced that she is going to die. I slowed my gulps, trying to let Chloe's current state be her downfall instead of blood loss. Lord Bronwyn certainly was not an idiot, but he didn't know the functioning of the human body as well as I did. It's the only advantage I had at the moment, but I'd be an idiot if I didn't use it. All he really wanted right now was a good show. Chloe whined as I pressed my nails against her back, trying to get her to hold still. It would hurt a lot less if she would just hold still. She even tried pushing me away. I continued with my pattern, taking slow gulps as not to send her into hypovolemic shock. The last thing I needed right now was her organs failing. Her whines and deep breaths became more and more frequent as the effects of blood loss began showing themselves. Mars, she begged through her tears. Damn it, hated it when they begged. I growled quietly as her pulse began to weaken. I forgot how small she was compared to the amount of blood I've already taken. Perhaps my plan wouldn't work as well as I had hoped. I forced myself to slow my intake even more. It was difficult given how good her blood was, and the fact that it was coming from a live host. Her breaths began to shallow as I felt her weight fall into me. Finally, I let out a quiet sigh as I held her weightless body against mine, removing my fangs from her neck. I'm hoping that was all Lord Bronwyn was looking for. My gaze lifted to him as I held my tongue against her neck to help stop the bleeding. I still took a lot of blood from her. She's nowhere near safe yet. Lord Bronwyn was beaming with joy and amusement. I lifted my head from Chloe, wiping the blood that ended up dripping down my chin. I licked the blood from my hand. "Will that be all, my lord?" I asked humbly. He grinned from ear to ear, sitting up straighter on his throne. "Yes, Nicholas. You are dismissed." Thank God. I stood to my original height, setting the unconscious Chloe over my shoulder as I gave a small bow. Without another word, I stormed out of there. Nico's POV. I ignored the two guards as I threw the doors open, evidently scaring the one on the left. Hell, I ignored everyone. Chloe's skin was beginning to feel cooler, even to me. If her skin is cooler than mine, then that's definitely not a good sign. I rushed even faster down the spiral stairs. I paused on one of the steps, stopping one of the castle's slaves by grabbing his shoulder. His eyes flickered to Chloe before settling onto me, keeping his usual calm demeanor. "What can I do for you, sir?" He recited his typical line. "Have a glass of B negative delivered to my room as soon as possible." I commanded. I doubt he knew how serious I was about as soon as possible. The boy nodded. "Right away." With that, I continued back down to my room. I barely paid attention to the stares I was getting from others. An unconscious pet was fairly common within this castle, so I don't see what the big deal is. As soon as I made it to my floor, my evolved speed carried me the rest of the way to my door and into my room. I didn't have a lot of time to waste here. I carefully laid Chloe onto the couch, noticing how much paler she had gotten. Her breaths were quiet. I sighed as I shrugged off my vest, rolling up my sleeves as I made my way into my bathroom. I may as well get these things I need while I wait for the blood to arrive. It's been a while since I've done a blood transfusion, but the process was simple enough that I doubt I could do it wrong. I paused for a second once I saw my reflection. It had been so long since I had fed from a live host that I forgot what I looked like after I did. My eyes had lost their green color, instead being replaced with a deep red. My skin had changed its color as well, adding some shade to my naturally pale skin. Something about drinking straight from something alive did this to us, that and the wave of pleasure and satisfaction we feel while doing it. I wasn't quite sure how it happened or why it only happened when we take blood fresh. My tongue rubbed against the top of my mouth, the taste of her blood still lingering in my mouth. It was pretty much the only thing about humans that I didn't understand. I sighed, snapping myself back to the task at hand and throwing open the large cabinet. It was more cluttered than I remember it being. I quickly shuffled through the clutter of needles and pills, grabbing the 4 once I found it. I placed the 4 between my teeth and continued to look for the blood bag. Please tell me that I have one. I hate to have to do this by hand. It's so time-consuming that way. I ended up having to take everything out of the damn cabinet in order to find it. Of course, it was in the very back. Sighing to myself, I grabbed it, headed out of the bathroom, leaving the mess there for now. Damn it, where the hell is that blood? I set the blood bag near Chloe's feet, clicking it into the 4 so that it was snug before going to remove her collar. Only then did I notice the tear streaks that were still evident on her face. It was so different seeing that level of fear in her. I've seen her fear ever since I bought her, but all of that was nothing compared to what I saw after I said that I defeed from her. My head snapped to the side as I heard a knock on the door. It's about time. I quickly went to the door and opened it. A different slave than the one I talked to stood there, a large glass of blood sitting on the tray that he held in his hand. Your order, sir, he said, bowing as he held the tray towards me. I took the glass from the tray, examining it for a second. This should be enough. I uttered a thanks to the boy before closing the door. I twirled the glass before bringing the brim to my lips, making sure that it was actually B negative. Sometimes the slaves mess up, and I didn't want to risk the life of my pet by giving her the wrong blood. It was indeed B negative, but the taste had nothing compared to Chloe's. With that, I made my way back over to her, quickly filling up the blood bag and setting the empty glass onto the coffee table. I carefully hung the blood bag on the lamp, making sure that it wouldn't fall. The blood slowly began to travel down the tube. Taking the 4 into my hands, I slowly placed the needle into the soft spot under her elbow. I let out a long sigh as I slowly took a step back, admiring my work. The blood was making its way down to the 4 and into her system. Everything seemed to be running fine. She'll be fine. I picked up the glass as I turned around, intending to go back to my work as I sipped at the excess blood that lingered at the bottom of the glass. Hopefully, I'll be able to do the rest of it in peace. The last thing I need is another interruption. I turned my head back towards Chloe before I sat in my desk chair. Yeah, she'll be fine. Chloe's POV. It hurt. My neck, my arm, my head. All of it hurt. Why? The last thing I remembered was. My eyes shot open as I remembered, an exasperated gasp entering my throat. Light shone in from the curtains, showing me that I was in Master S' room, sitting peacefully on his couch. Wasn't he dead? I wasn't sure if I should be relieved or not. My arms moved to push myself up further, but I quickly stopped myself as I noticed the 4 sticking out of my arm. My stomach instantly turned. I hated needles. Oh, you're awake. I stiffened as I heard Master's words, my head whipping around to find him. I spotted him, lifting himself from his bed as he ran a hand through his hair. The sight of him walking towards me didn't aid in my uneasiness. How do you feel? He asked. His question caught me off guard. Still, I tried my best to respond to him as quickly and truthfully as possible. My head hurts, I said, avoiding eye contact. He was silent for a moment. Is that the only thing that hurts? I shook my head. My neck and I looked down at the needle piercing my skin. Arm does too. My body tensed as I felt his hands brush back my hair, thumb trailing against the aching mark he left on my skin. That's all normal. It seems to be healing quickly, so it probably won't leave a very noticeable scar. He was speaking so casually, like he didn't almost suck me dry last night. I don't know why I expected anything different. I whimpered a bit as he removed the needle from my arm, his thumb pressing against where it used to be as he set it on the coffee table. What was that for? I stuttered. I gave you a blood transfusion. He responded quickly. My eyes widened. Why? His eyes met with mine for a moment, making me shrink back a bit. I didn't want you to die because of something the Lord made me do. He stated. He removed his thumb from my elbow, licking off my blood from it. I focused my gaze back to where the 4 used to be, looking where the evident mark was as Master took the blood bag and 4 into the bathroom. He saved me? For some reason that concept was so hard to grasp. This whole thing was hard to grasp. I thought back to last night. How I was fearing for my life the moment the Lord ordered Master to drink for me. How Master refused to, stating that he was saving me for the blood moon. I just remembered how fast my heart was beating. It felt like I was trapped. I couldn't even move. Like the fear was holding me there, just allowing reality to happen. And then how much it hurt the moment I felt his fangs press into my skin. The rest was a blur to me. I paused for a moment. The blood moon, maybe that's when I'll die. God, Chloe, if you want to ask questions, just ask them. My eyes widened as I turned to face him. What? He leaned against his desk, arms crossed. It's written all over your face, plus a pet always has questions after they've first been fed from. I blinked at him, unsure of what to say. I mean, yeah, I had questions, but some of them I'm not even sure I want answered. How did I taste? I decided to ask. Master's eyes widened before he rose a brow. I literally almost killed you last night, and your first question is that? He asked. I shrunk back. I've just always been curious. I stated quickly. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. Be negative was supposedly good, so I just wanted to know. Master sighed, looking down at his desk. Amazing. I've honestly never tasted anything like it. He said. I wasn't sure how I should feel about that. I decided to quickly shift the conversation, lest I start to panic. So, was that really a Class 3 hemorrhage? I asked. I had learned about those in the short time I was in school. They told us that the chance of survival was low unless immediate action was taken. He breathed out a short laugh as he rolled his eyes a bit. No. To be honest, I don't even think that Lord Bronwyn knows what a Class 3 hemorrhage is. He pretty much just wanted you to pass out. I tilted my head a bit. Then how much did you end up taking? Master thought for a moment. Probably too much than I initially planned to. In the moment, I didn't account for how small you are. I pursed my lips as my fingers trailed against the marks on my neck. Am I really that small? I asked. Master just stared at me. You only barely stand below my chest when we stand side by side. He stated. I looked away, slightly embarrassed. I've always been a bit self-conscious about my size, regardless that vampires were naturally taller than humans and the fact that humans were typically bred to be smaller. Well, yeah. But I didn't think that affected my blood. Master nodded, taking a step forward. You carry less blood than a typical human, but that's nothing to be ashamed of. It just made it that much easier for him to kill me. Maybe he did decide that he wanted a pet with more blood and just dispose of me soon. Again, I shifted the conversation. I just found it so strange how open Master was about this whole thing. Were you, I stopped myself, trying to put together the right words, serious about the blood moon thing? The blood moon was one of the only nights that I feared for my life even as a child. It was the night at the end of every season where a full moon would raise into the sky, red as blood. Something about it made vampires become more monster than anything. They would almost go savage, hunting down anything with a pulse, animals, people in the city, even their own kind, until they got enough blood to ease their hunger. I've witnessed plenty of pets die from the pet master back when I was in the shop, despite the rule against it. I was surprised to see Master actually seemed bothered by my question. No. Next question. I was surprised that he actually said no, but questioned why he disregarded it so quickly. Still, I moved on. The last thing I needed was for him to be upset. Did you enjoy it? Master's eyes furrowed a little, silence filling the room for a short while. Not necessarily, he started. I don't really enjoy being forced to do things. I wanted to ask why he didn't want to do it, but opted to leave the answer at that. Is that all? Master asked. Not really, but I nodded regardless. He kind of seemed like he was done answering them. I'll just ask them later. If he lets me. All right then, he said as he began walking towards me, as Xander is bringing over dough pretty soon for checkup, so I'm just going to have you sit on my bed while she's here so Xander won't bug you. I tilted my head. Why is he bringing her here? He claims that she's sick, and I used to be a doctor, so he just brings her to me. He said. A pet doctor? I asked. I wouldn't even consider pet doctors to be actual doctors. They're just the low-life vampires that couldn't get any other job. He shook his head. No. I used to work in the city. The humans practically begged the Lord for another doctor, and I was the only one with prior training, so he just assigned me to do it for a couple years. My eyes widened a bit, wondering if he had worked there while I lived there. Speaking of which, are you caught up on your shots? I was taken aback by this. I don't know. I answered truthfully. Master hummed a bit. The last shot I got was for kindergarten, but I wasn't sure if there was anything else to worry about. All right. We'll go get your records the hospital tomorrow. He spoke calmly. I felt my nerves start to grow. We're going to go into the city tomorrow? I asked. Master nodded, stepping right in front of me. I never wanted to show my face in that city ever again. I went from a citizen to a pet. From decently high to rock bottom. What if the people laugh at me and mock me? My thoughts were cut off as extended his hand towards me. I don't need you catching whatever dough has so. He gestured towards his hand. Maybe he wouldn't make me go with him tomorrow. Hopefully. My eyes switched between his face and his hand before I finally took it. He slowly helped me to my feet. I didn't realize how weak I felt until I had to stand. I'm pretty sure that my legs were shaking, not to mention that my head started pounding. Was this normal? Master must have read my face. Your body is just coping with the drastic changes it's had to go through. He said as he led me towards his bed. Remind me after Xander leaves to order you some lunch. Your body needs it. I nodded twice as he helped me up onto his amazingly comfortable bed. I had to fight the urge to lay down onto it. Master then pulled my collar from his pocket. I stayed silent as he put it around my neck in a way that it wasn't touching the mark. Then, as if on cue, a knock came from the door. Chloe's POV. I stayed quiet and still as Xander struck right into Master's room, practically dragging Doe behind him. My eyes widened when I saw her. She looked physically drained, like she was going to pass out any second now. Xander looked around the room as Master shut the door, taking in a deep breath. Did you do something with the place? It looks different, Xander said. Master rolled his eyes. That's not why you're here. Xander eyes furrowed for a moment. HM? Oh yeah. Where do you want this? He asked, lifting the edge of Doe's leash. Master sighed as he walked into the bathroom. Just take off her leash and have her sit on that couch, he said, pointing to the one that I woke up on. Xander nodded as he made his way over to the couch. Apparently Doe was too out of it because she ended up being choked by the leash before she started stumbling over to Xander. Now I really felt bad for her. Doe weakly climbed onto the couch before Xander took forever to unclip her leash. Master walked back into the room, now with the sleeves of his shirt rolled up to his elbows. His eyes met with mine for a second before he turned to Xander. He started to speak, but Xander beat him to it. You let your pet on the bed? Xander asked, now facing me as he sat himself onto one of the other couches. I shifted my head down, looking at the now very interesting blanket. Not usually, Master said, walking over to the couch. But I didn't need her catching whatever Doe has, so I decided to make an exception. Xander eyes furrowed as he looked at me. She's gonna start disobeying if you keep letting her up there, he said. I curiously tilted my head up towards Master. Believe me, she know better, Master replied. And now what's wrong with yours? I looked towards Doe as soon as Xander did, trying not to make eye contact with him. I don't know. She told me that she was feeling really hot last night, but I thought that she was just trying to make up some lame excuse so I wouldn't drink from her. Her blood tasted a little different than usual, so I guess she wasn't totally making it up. And this morning I had to force her to wake up, which was weird because she is always up before me, and then her breathing started getting all weird and her body wouldn't stop shaking. Master just stared at him for a second before letting out a long sigh. Though didn't he even flinch when Master reached his hand towards the back of her neck. Maybe she just didn't care at this point. Master's eyes widened. How did you not feel this fever? He asked. Xander pursed his lips out a bit. What fever? Master sighed once more. She's literally burning, Xander. I'm surprised that she was able to make it over here without collapsing. Master went through what seemed like a routine, opening her mouth, checking various parts of her body, checking her pulse. My room is like right down the hall. It's not even that far, Xander retorted. Master glared at him. That's not the point. Xander sighed in annoyance as he slouched himself against the couch. So what should I do, all-powerful wise one? I almost snickered at the confused look on Master's face. Just take her back to your room. Give her a blanket and some water and just let her sleep for a while. She'll get better naturally over the next few days. Oh, and keep her in your room until she is better. She is most likely contagious. Master glanced over at me as he finished. Xander just groaned. So you're saying that I can't get her branded tomorrow? He whined. Not unless you want to get every other pet there sick. Xander huffed out a big sigh. But I got Layla to agree to go with me. That sucks. Maybe you should have taken better care of your pet. Xander looked towards Doe for a moment. Fine, I'll just do it the next time the branders come, he said. Good choice, Master responded. I was kind of surprised that Xander planned on having her that long. He kinda seemed like he went through a pet every month despite how old the scars looked. Oh, also, a master started. I don't drink from her for at least 3 days. This made Xander's eyes went wide. What? Doe actually showed some form of relief from that. You heard me. Master replied. Xander seemed to be at a loss for words, like that was the most terrible news he had ever heard. Well then how else am I going to get blood? Master rolled his eyes. You could just, drink the stuff that the castle provides for us. Xander looked at him like he was stupid. That stuff is nasty compared to live blood. Master sighed once again. He seemed to do that a lot when Xander was around. Yeah, I'm aware. But it's not my fault you got yourself addicted to it. Xander leaned forward in the couch, setting his head on his hand as he looked at Master. Just get some from one of your friend's pets if you really must, but give Doe a break for a while, Master finished as he leaned back against the bed. My breath caught in my throat as Xander looked at me before setting his eyes back onto Master. Okay, he said with a grin. Is that it? Master nodded. Yeah, now get out. I have things to do. Xander hummed as he stood from the couch. Of course you do, he said as he clipped Doe's leash on. Come along, pet. Doe hurried off of the couch the best of her ability before she could get choked. She seemed to be happy with how things ended up. Master just watched as he left. Despite my efforts to not make eye contact, I still noticed the last glance Xander sent me before the door closed behind him. I felt myself shrink up as my stomach began to feel weird. I really did not like him. Master sighed as he pushed himself forward off of the bed. Idiot. I still couldn't get the grin Xander sent me out of my head. It was like he had some devious plan. En Nico? I asked, planning on telling him what happened. He turned his head towards me. Oh yeah, I need to order you some food, he said as he walked towards his desk. I held my tongue, not wanting to interrupt him. It's probably not a big deal anyways. I'm probably just overreacting. Chloe's POV. I looked out the window of the limo as we drove into the city, recalling all of the familiar places I would go as a child. Seeing all of this again brought up some strange mixes of emotions, reminding me of what I once had. Master had been quiet most of the ride, just occasionally looking up to see how far away we were. Even I knew that we were close to the doctor's office. I went to there a lot as a child, but only because I used to be really clumsy. A sigh left my lips as I thought back to the long sunny days I would spend with my older sister, playing in the park until the sun set. Then we would come to Mom's cooking and then listen to one of Dad's many stories. I quickly turned my head away from the window the moment I felt a lump begin to form in my throat. Master noticed this, his head turning to me. I couldn't let myself cry, not after what the pet master did to me the last time I did. No matter how much I wanted to, I refused to let myself. I let out a long breath as I leaned my head back against the seat, trying to focus on the humming of the car instead of my own memories. You okay? I stiffened at the sound of his voice breaking the silence. Oh yeah, I replied quickly, clasping my hands near my lap. He looked at me for a little while longer before turning his head to the window. He sat up a bit straighter as he did. I see it, he said, talking about the hospital not far ahead. My stomach turned a bit as he spoke. Why it only kicked in just now was beyond me, but I was nervous. Nervous to go back into my hometown and risk someone recognizing me, or me not being able to keep myself together. I was even too nervous to ask Master if I could stay in his room while he came here. I was planning on doing it last night before we went to bed, but chickened out last minute. I clasped my hands tighter as the limo came to a stop. Master grabbed my leash in one hand and opened the door with the other. The both of us stepped into the afternoon sun. Luckily, I didn't spot anyone in the general area. I followed Master as he walked up to the front window and tapped on the glass. The slave rolled the window down, allowing Master to lean into it and tell the boys something that I didn't quite catch. I was surprised to see that the limo began moving after Master leaned out of the window. I guess he gave the slave an errand to run. With that, we walked towards the entrance. The familiar ding of the censor filled the room as we entered into the small waiting room. I quickly looked around, seeing if I recognized anyone. Lucky, there were only a couple people, none of which I recognized. All of them froze at the sight of a vampire making his way to the front desk, one of them hurrying out of the way as we did so. Master didn't seem to pay them any mind. Some of them sent me remorseful looks, while some of the others avoided their gazes altogether. Despite Thea's safety against vampires, they were still terrified. They still knew that Master could easily kill them if they disrespected him, and he most likely wouldn't get punished. Master leaned against the front desk, where the man working there had his back towards us as he organized prescriptions. After a while of the man not noticing us, Master subtly cleared his throat. The man quickly turned his head, his trademark smile covering his face as he spoke. "Good afternoon. How may I help?" He stopped mid-sentence when he saw who was there. I chewed on the inside of my lip as a name finally came to the man's familiar face. He was the one that would always take care of me whenever I came in here. The always cheerful Dr. Marshall. Oh. Nicholas, he laughed nervously. I didn't think I'd be seeing you here again. His stance was tense as he stood a safe distance away from the front desk. Yeah, you and me both. Master replied emotionlessly. So, what brings you by? He asked, trying to hide his discomfort behind his smile. Master glanced down at me. I need her medical records. She used to live here. Dr. Marshall's eyes widened when he finally looked at me. I think he recognized me. I quickly averted my gaze to the floor out of embarrassment and shame. I am. He paused for a long moment. I can't do that. His voice was quiet. Master rose a brow as his finger began tapping against the desk, obviously annoyed that he wasn't cooperating. Come again? He asked as more of a challenge. I didn't quite catch that. Any confidence that Dr. Marshall held quickly deteriorated. Medical records are a private thing, he stuttered. I can't just hand it out. Master's eyes were furrowed into a glare at this point, making my nerves shoot up even more. I'm more qualified to have them than you are, he stated. Marshall gulped, still not giving in. I have to keep these safe, is all he said. She's not a citizen here anymore, Marshall. You have no need to keep her records here any longer. Master spoke lowly. The doctor stayed silent, probably at a loss for words. Still, I can't legally give them to you. He spoke. I heard a quiet rumble come from Master's throat. It wasn't exactly a growl, but it sounded pretty close to one. Fine, he said. I flinched as he dropped my leash onto the floor before he opened up the entry to get where Dr. Marshall was. I didn't dare take a step. If Master trusted me enough to stay there, then that's exactly what I was going to do. Marshall quickly stepped back out of pure fear as Master made his way over to the large wall filled with many different colored files. What are you doing? Dr. Marshall asked nervously. It was obvious that he wasn't going to do anything to stop Master from doing what he wanted. Well, since you can't legally give them to me, and I can't legally drain you from every drop of blood you keep in that body, I figured I should just take them myself to save both of us the trouble. Dr. Marshall's color drained from his face as the entire room went dead silent. He looked like he was about to say something, but Master spoke first. "Last name?" he said to me, his eyes meeting mine. All eyes fell on me for a short while. "C. Cardinal," I replied. Master nodded before he continued skimming through the many files. It had been too long since I had heard my last name. It almost sounded like it didn't belong anymore. "Chloe E. Cardinal?" Master asked as he pulled one of the files from the shelf. I nodded. Marshall looked at me for a moment as Master began looking through my records. I refused to meet his gaze. Master hummed to himself for a moment before he closed the file and made his way into the back room. I could still see him through the glass that separated that room from this one. "And Nicholas, you're not allowed in there," Dr. Marshall said nervously. Master paid no mind to him, continuing to grab an assortment of items. I grew more nervous as he grabbed a couple of syringes. "I worked here longer than you've been alive, Marshall." Marshall bit back whatever he was about to say. "Why, you don't work here anymore, so you technically are no longer allowed in there." I could tell that this was taking up every ounce of bravery that Marshall had. "Are you going to try to stop me?" Master asked plainly. A look of nervous defeat crawled over Marshall's face. "This is stealing," he said. Master paused, looking over my records again to make sure that he had grabbed everything that he needed. "Not really," a Master replied as he walked back into this room. "She would have needed all of this anyways. Now I'm just the one that going to give it to her." He casually made his way back over to me, a plastic bag and file in one hand. He grabbed my leash near the clasp and dragged his hand up until the edge of it was in his hand. I didn't hesitate to follow him when I realized that he didn't plan on waiting for me to. The room stayed silent as he opened the door. He paused as soon as the door was open, turning his head back to the doctor. "Thank you for your cooperation." Chloe's POV. Master had me sit on the couch the moment we made it back into his room. I guess he wanted to get this done as soon as possible. He took the supplies he got into his bathroom before returning with the only 3 syringes that already had something in them and a bandage. "According to your records, you missed the shots you were supposed to get when you were 12. I stared at the needles as he approached, my stomach turning a bit. "Oh, here is all I responded." He glanced at me for my lack of a response. "You sound nervous," he said as he sat beside me. I watched as he organized the things on the coffee table. "I am." "Why?" I toyed nervously with my pinky finger. Haven't really had the best experiences when it comes to needles," I admitted quietly. Nico picked up the first syringe, looking over it before taking off the thing that was covering the needle. "What, did Dr. Marshall not do it right or something?" he asked. I shook my head, growing more nervous as he extended my arm. And no, he was fine, but the pet master wasn't exactly the nicest when he gave them to us, I said. Master paused inches from my arm, his eyes furrowing. "The pet master would give you guys shots?" I nodded again, shuddering at the memory. "For what?" I shrugged. "A lot of things. Sometimes to make us sleep, sometimes to make us heal faster after he punished us so someone would buy us. Sometimes he'd put a certain drug in us just to see how we would act." I paused for a moment. He wasn't gentle when doing it either. Master just looked at me before he let out a long sigh. "Pet masters have always been stupid," he mumbled before lining up the needle with the spot under my elbow. I found myself holding my breath as he pushed the needle into my skin. I was surprised that it didn't hurt nearly as bad as I thought it would. It still hurt a little, but it was a pain I could deal with. Apparently, Master found my reaction to be a bit amusing. He removed the needle from my arm, setting the syringe on the table and picking up the next one. He froze for a moment as he spotted the small drop of blood rising from my arm. I was about to say something, but he just shook his head and carried on with the other shot. I hadn't seen him drink blood of any kind since the night he drank from me, and knowing what I do about vampires, that can't be good. Maybe he hasn't been feeling well lately? No, if that was the case then he probably would have been drinking more blood. I didn't even notice he was done with the second syringe and was already doing the third. Again, he was staring at the blood on my arm, hungrily. It was almost like he was fighting to taste it. I looked down in nervousness as he removed the last needle from my arm, proceeding to cover it up with a bandage as if what I just saw didn't happen. "See? That wasn't so bad, right?" he said as he got up and took the empty syringes into the bathroom. I just watched as he did so, looking down at the bandage on my arm. "Yeah." Master returned into the room, running a hand through his hair as he sighed once again. He's going to suck me dry sooner or later if he doesn't drink from something soon. "Nico?" He lifted his eyes to meet mine. Again, I felt nervous under his gaze. "You haven't had any blood in a while," I said. Master just looked at me before walking to his desk. "So you noticed?" His voice was plain. It gave me no indication as to why he was doing this. "Yes," I started. "Are you okay?" He seemed surprised by my question. "Yeah. I'm fine. The blood moon is in a week, so I've been trying to wean myself off of it so I won't be so bloodthirsty," he said casually. My eyes widened at his response. A vampire, trying to wean himself off of blood. That's physically impossible. They need blood to survive. He of all beings should know that. In school they would teach us that a vampire usually could only go about 72 hours without blood before they instinctually started hunting for it. That was still in another 24 hours, but still. I swallowed the sudden lump in my throat. "I see. He knows what he's doing more than I do, right? He's the vampire here. I'm just the stupid pet that should probably keep her mouth shut." "You seem concerned," he spoke. I quickly shook my head. It wasn't my place to be concerned, not at his pet. Questioning a master's actions was also not my place. It's not like I could do anything to stop him regardless. I was just curious. I lied, quickly trying to end this conversation before I could get myself into trouble. Lying to a vampire was nearly impossible, but Master seemed to accept my answer anyways. "I see," he repeated my words, grabbing my leash from off of his desk. "Dinner is in a couple minutes," he stated. "We should get going." Chloe's POV. I often found myself sitting in the windowsill, staring out into the world, now being one of those times. The moon was shining extra bright it seemed tonight. It was lovely. The night breeze felt nice on my skin swell. Master had allowed me to open the window before he left. He said that he had a delivery that needed to be picked up. I've been hoping that he would pick up some blood while he was at it. His 72 hours were almost up. I let out a long breath, scooting closer to the edge, letting the faint sound of the rustling leaves below fill my mind instead. I swung my legs over the edge, letting them hang over a height that would no doubt lead to my demise. Not that it really mattered. Pretty much everything around me could lead to my demise. I mulled that thought over for a minute, the constant thought returning to me, asking myself how much time I really had left. Honestly, I've been alive here longer than I had initially thought that I would, but that luck wouldn't last me forever. Was it even luck? If it wasn't, then what else would it be? Do you plan on jumping? Master's voice sounded behind me, startling me since I didn't even hear him come in. I quickly turned my head to see him shutting the door behind him, one of those large recyclable shopping bags in one of his hands. You, No, I replied, slowly bringing my legs back into the room. Good. He started as he sat down onto the couch that was partially facing me. I didn't think I had made your life that bad. I just blinked at him. I don't think anything would bring me to do that to myself. I swore to myself a while back that I would live as long as I possibly could since my family couldn't. Do some pets jump? Master rested his feet on the coffee table. Yeah, sometimes. There's a reason that most of us keep our windows locked. He said. I can't blame those pets. With the way most of them are treated, I kind of expected it. Yet he trusted me enough to not only open the window but leave me alone while it was open. Strange. Master began looking into the bag as the room fell into silence, apparently done with that conversation. The slave finally got what I had asked him to get. I guess the store in town didn't have everything I was looking for, so he had to order it from someone else. I swung my legs over the other side, so I was facing him. What is it? I asked. He glanced up at me before tossing the bag to the other side of the couch. Come find out. It's yours. My eyes went wide for a long moment, flickering from the bag to Master. Why would he get me something? More importantly, what would he get me? I slowly slid off of the windowsill and made my way over to the bag. Master just watched me from the corner of his eye as I crawled onto the couch, so I was in front of the bag. I cautiously lifted the bag so it was facing me. My mouth fell open as soon as I spotted the thing inside. I carefully pulled out the large sketchbook, admiring the black leather cover and the silver binding. Holy crap! The ones I would get as a child were barely even as big as my hand, but this... I couldn't even think of how to describe it. My fingers ran across the soft paper before something else in the bag caught my attention. There was more. I peered into the bag again to find a whole variety of brand new drawing supplies. Different kinds of pens, pencils, acrylics, colored pencils, and even watercolor paint and brushes. None of this stuff looked cheap either. I was at a loss for words. I was at a loss for everything. He got all of this stuff. For me. Master leaned forward and removed his feet from the coffee table, causing me to force myself back into reality. I looked towards him, mouth still agape. How much was all of this? Master just shrugged. Does it matter? He asked plainly. I turned my head back to the sketchbook, absent-mindedly tracing its front cover. Why? I questioned. He rose a brow, like the answer was plainly obvious. You have talent, Chloe, you should embrace it. His words somehow made me even more shocked than I already was, plus it will give you something else to do than stare out that window all day. He finished. The last thing I expected was to be actually complimented by my own master. I didn't even think that was possible. Still, even through all my shock, I think I actually felt happy. It was a foreign feeling after all these years, so I didn't recognize it right away. I could actually execute all the ideas that I've had over the years. With amazing supplies too. Not to mention that beautiful sketchbook that I get to keep it all in. I didn't even think before I had thrown my arms around him, setting my chin on his shoulder. His body tensed against mine in surprise at my sudden gesture. Thank you. I heard myself say. It was only then that I actually realized what I was doing. I was about to make a move to let go, but Master actually returned my gesture. "You're welky," he cut himself off, his body suddenly becoming ridiculously tense. I started to know that something was wrong the second his grip tightened on me. The only other time he had been forceful with me was when we were with Lord Bronwyn. His breath hitched before his breaths started to shake. I could feel them against my neck. "Nico?" I tried to pull away, but his grip held strong. This wasn't like him at all. It was almost like he was in a daze. I was finally beginning to fully panic. I let out a short squeal as he suddenly grabbed a fistful of my hair, his other arm holding me still against him as his teeth pressed against the top of my neck. I didn't move. I couldn't even if I wanted to. The quick change from joy to fear left me immobile. I didn't even have time to fully process what just happened. All I knew was that he was going to drink for me again. His instincts were forcing him to. He forced himself to stay away from blood, and now I was paying the price for it. Of course I knew this was going to happen, but now that the moment was finally here, I was terrified. I let out a sharp whine as I first felt the sting of his fangs against my neck. The next thing I knew, he was pulling me back, one hand covering his mouth as his eyes were wide. His breaths were heavy as his eyes quickly shifted around, like he was trying to figure out what he just did. I guess he figured it out the second he saw the look of fear that I held. He suddenly stood from the couch and hurriedly made his way to the door, his hand still covering his mouth. I just watched as he left, slamming the door shut as I just tried to figure out what exactly just happened. He didn't bite me. He actually fought against his own instincts and didn't feed from me. I suddenly found myself running towards the door, swinging it open as I ran into the hall. He couldn't be seen in any direction. Luckily, no other vampires were either. I just let out a long sigh of mixed emotions as I rubbed my hand against my head, still trying to calm myself down. He'll be back soon, right? He just went to go. My thoughts were cut off when I heard the door close behind me. Oh no! I quickly turned as a new panic began to run through me. I pushed against the door handle, getting nothing but the lock refusing to budge. I needed Master's thumbprint to get in. My hand instinctively reached to my neck. I was the tiniest bit relieved that I still had my collar on. But still. I glanced around the empty halls. I could find him, right? He couldn't have gone far, right? Wrong. I knew he was somewhere in this castle far from where I was, but if I just sat here and waited for him to come back, people would get suspicious. I sighed once more, leaning my back against the door. Of course, the one time I was actually happy, something had to come along and ruin it. I tried my best to swallow my fear and panic as I pushed myself off of the door and began making my way down the hall. He'll find me when he comes back, right? Yeah. He'll find me, we'll go back to his room, and I'll stay out of his way for the rest of the night while I try out all of the new things he got me. Wouldn't that be nice? I kept my head down as I continued walking. Only 2 couple vampires came into my view as I did, both of which looked down at me questioningly, like they were deciding whether or not they could make me their midnight snack or not. I never thought I'd think this, but thank God for this collar. Chloe? I paused at the sound of my name, quickly searching for the source. It was Xander. He stood leaning against the doorframe that apparently was his room. What the hell are you doing out here? I didn't miss his eyes as he glanced at my collar for a moment. Where's Nico? I just stood silent in fear. What should I even say? What could I even say? Lying to a vampire was impossible. Apparently my silence annoyed Xander enough that he moved on. I guess it doesn't really matter, but I need you to do me a favor. It was weird not seeing that typical grin on his face. He actually looked like he needed something to be done. My eyes widened. What the heck could he want from me? Didn't he trust this? Didn't he want to be in this situation at all? What? I finally asked. He gestured for me to come into his room. I have a stack of files that I need you to take to Nico. I nervously chewed my lip. Every fiber of my body was telling me to say no. He could easily get one of the castle slaves to do that for him. But still, I knew that I couldn't refuse the will of a vampire without punishment. Even if it wasn't my master. I wanted to cry. I just wanted to curl up and let myself fall away from this. Maybe if I'm holding the files, people wouldn't get so suspicious. I could just wait outside his door and this whole thing could be over. Without another word, I stepped into his room. Chloe's POV. His room was dark. That was the first thing I noticed. The second thing I noticed was the size of the room, how it was pretty much exactly like Master's except for the placement of his furniture. The last thing I noticed was Doe sitting in a cage in the corner of the room, her eyes wide and fearful as she stared at me, like she was begging me to leave. Xander closed the door, cutting off most of the light that was entering into the room. I could barely see anything more than 3 feet ahead of me. I took a long, shaky breath as I turned towards Xander, freezing under his suddenly confident gaze. His mossy green eyes shone through the dark as all vampires' eyes did. His familiar grin made a quick appearance, instinctively making me take a step back. The slim hope I had of those files even existing quickly disappeared. What have I done? You know, Chloe, he started, taking a slow step towards me. I never really understood why vampires should have to drink blood from a glass when we have perfectly capable humans living in our presence. My breath hitched as the air around me started to feel thicker, making it more difficult to breathe. I stepped back as he took another step forward, my heart thundering in my chest. It's always seemed like a lost cause to me, you know? I mean, why should we drink garbage when we could feel the rush of something alive every time? My chest was beginning to hurt. But I guess it makes some sort of sense. I guess not being able to drink from my own pet has enlightened me on that. He chuckled softly. It still tastes like trash though. A sharp gasp ripped from my throat as my back hit the front of his bed. To be completely honest with you, I'm sick and tired of drinking that shit. But still, I had to follow the doctor's orders. He paused once he was right in front of me, greedily staring down at me. And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he say I could get what I wanted from one of my friend's pets? He looked at me like he was waiting for an answer. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. And that, dear, he leaned down a bit, lifting my chin up with his finger, is why you're here. Greed flashed behind his eyes as his grin grew enough to flash one of his fangs. I didn't even have time to react before he grabbed me, and the world became a blur. I found myself laying face up on his bed, my arms tied above my head by something already connected to the bed frame. Panic and fear exploded in my head at the same time as I struggled to get out. This was exactly how I imagined having a master would be, but now that it was actually happening, I just wanted to curl up and rot away. He wasn't even my master. Xander's chuckle brought my attention back to him. I could see his eyes near the foot of the bed, like he hadn't moved at all. It's oddly interesting seeing something other than Doe in that position. He noted. I was terrified. The look in his eyes told me that he wouldn't hesitate to kill me if I upset him. And the tone of his voice told me that he couldn't care less what would happen to me. I silently prayed that somehow, Master would get me out of this. That something would get me out of this. Xander seemed to get bored of the silence and slowly began stalking his way into the bed. My body froze against my will as he crawled over me, trapping my body under his. He seemed amused by the fact that my body was shaking in fear. You look like you want to say something, dear. There were many things I wanted to say. I wanted to scream for someone to help. I wanted to beg Xander to let me go, but I don't feel like the words would leave mouth. Please, or it was all that came out, a please don't. I begged, knowing full well that it wasn't he going on work. Xander's smirk just grew as he leaned down towards my ear. Go ahead. Beg and scream all you want. They made these walls thick for a reason. I could tell that he liked the fact that tears fell down my face. I couldn't he get out of this? Master, wouldn't he want this? I said quietly, turning my head away as I felt his breaths on my neck. I wasn't he even sure if that was true. It was the only thing left that I thought could get me out of this. Xander just paused for a second before he hummed. He suddenly grabbed my jaw, forcing me to look at him. You're smarter than you look, he started. That's exactly why he's not going to find out. My stomach turned even more. He laughed again. I'm guessing you're now wondering how you're going to be able to hide a bite mark? I stayed silent, just stared at him, not knowing what else to do. Well, there's a lovely little vein that trails from here. I flinched as his finger touched the inside of my lower thigh, tracing it up my leg and under my shirt until he reached a certain spot on the side of my hip, to here, right around the pelvis. That shouldn't be too hard to keep hidden, right? I felt like I was about to throw up. At least he wasn't going to kill me, right? I squeezed my eyes shut, just wanting to get this over with. Despite my fear, I knew I could do nothing to stop this from happening. Oh, and he pulled me forwards by my collar. If Nico hears one word about this, his nails pressed against my throat enough to make me whine. I won't hesitate to rip out your pretty little throat. My eyes shot wide open before he pushed me back down. Have I made myself clear? He spoke as if he was daring me, so say no. I nodded to the best of my ability. He had made himself completely, unmistakably crystal clear. Good, he chuckled as he leaned down towards my hip. I again squeezed my eyes shut as my entire body tensed up. His hand moved my shirt out of the way as his teeth scraped against his chosen area. Relax, dear. He spoke lowly with a hint of sarcasm, his hands pinning my legs down onto the bed. It's only a vampire bite. I bit down on my lip the second I felt the sting of his fangs push into my skin. A short whimper left my mouth and my nails dug into my hands as my breaths began to speed up. Trying to focus on something else didn't work, like my body was forcing me to only focus on the pain. A hum of pleasure radiated from Xander before he stopped. He paused for a moment before he pulled himself away from me. I peered open my eyes to see his now red ones wide in surprise through the blur of tears. Holy shit, he said in an almost whisper. He sounded really pleased. My blood was evident on his fangs. I tried to move, but he was still holding me down. I can see why Nico wouldn't want anyone drinking from you, he said with a slight laugh. You have the kind of taste that he'd want all to himself. He didn't do anything else before he returned his fangs into my flesh. Chloe's POV. How long had it been? Minutes? Hours? It felt like I had been here for hours, tied to this bed while Xander took his sweet time drinking from me, though the fact that I wasn't dead yet told me that it hasn't even been near that long. Everything felt hazy, whether it was because of the blood loss or pure fear I wasn't sure. The only thing I could really process was the intense pain in my side, and the tight pressure of Xander's grip on my legs. The rest was just a blur, like none of my other senses wanted to experience this. I barely even felt myself fall against the bed, my body apparently feeling too weak to keep it tense anymore. Although, I did hear a small noise come from Xander as I felt him remove his fangs from my side. I didn't even have time to feel grateful before his eyes met with mine, now being an even deeper red than before. A devilish smirk rose to his face as he removed his hands from my legs. "Now, we don't want you passing out now, do we?" he asked, partially breathless. I didn't respond. I don't even think I could. I just stared at my blood that was currently staining his teeth. He slowly shifted himself so that he was hovering above me, one of his hands reaching towards the thing that was holding my arms. "Nico would freak out if you were gone that long, and knowing him, he would come to me first," he chuckled as the thing around my arms loosened, freeing them. "Even that would be a bad time for both of us, don't you think?" I nodded to the best of my ability, hoping that he would let me go faster if I did. "Good. Now, remember, not one word to Nicholas," he mocked heavily. Again I nodded. Xander's smirk just grew. Next thing I knew, I was back in the hallway, struggling to stay upright as my head pounded. I barely even realized that I had fallen onto my knees. Xander's amused chuckle brought my eyes to where he stood by his door frame. "Have fun getting back to him," he said. "EO. And don't worry about those files, I'll bring them to Nico myself tomorrow." I heard him laugh once more before he closed the door, just leaving me there. I just sat there, staring at the door as I tried to recollect my thoughts. A warm wetness snapped my head down towards my hips, seeing the trickle of blood falling from the wounds. Xander didn't stop the bleeding. I quickly covered the area with my hand, a new panic running through me. How was I supposed to hide this from Master then it was still bleeding? I shook my head, trying to calm myself down. I could stop it by the time I got there, right? Yeah. I slowly pushed myself onto my feet, stumbling forward against the wall as soon as I got up. Walking without support didn't seem like an option given my current condition. With one hand on the wall, and the other against my side, I began walking towards Master's room. Part of me hoped that he would be there while the other part of me didn't. I wondered if he even realized I was gone. What if he was mad at me for leaving? My eyes nervously glanced through the halls, making sure that no one was walking by or watching me. I stopped walking once I made sure no one was in sight, my legs trembling as I further leaned against the wall. Maybe I shouldn't go back until this stops bleeding. I looked down at my partially blood-stained hand, a lump forming in my throat as I tried to figure out how I was going to hide all of this. Why did this have to happen? Why did this happen to me? Today. Right after something finally good happened to me, and now I might not even live to be able to use it. I fell further into the wall, my entire body trembling at this point. Master's room almost seemed out of reach. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to will myself to keep going. A short scream exited my lips as I felt myself being grabbed and carried. The air around me seemed to rush past me before I opened my eyes. I was back in Master's room, sitting on the edge of his bed with my feet dangling over. My eyes widened when I saw him standing a few feet in front of me. He tried to catch his breath as his unusually messy hair hung in front of his face, like he had been running for a while. A mix of relief and fear filled me as I understood what had just happened. Master looked at me, a hint of worry evident in his eyes. I guess he could see the worry in mine too. "I've been looking everywhere for you," he said through his breaths. He luckily didn't sound mad. He actually sounded a bit relieved. "I am sorry," I responded, slowly removing my hand from my side and pulling down my shirt. Master just shook his head, taking a step closer to me. "Don't be," he started. I could smell the unmistakable scent of iron in his breath, proving that he had gotten some blood during that time. I shouldn't have forced myself to. He cut himself off, noticing the current state I was. "Holy shit, are you okay?" I hurriedly nodded my head. "Yup. I'm totally fine. 100% okay. I laughed nervously. He rose an eyebrow at my obvious lie. I quickly tried to come up with a decent story that he would believe, but still wouldn't he necessarily be lying. He just blinked at me, trying to figure something out. Chloe, you can tell me if you're not. His eyes went wide for a second as his nose crinkled. You're bleeding? My breath caught in my throat. You. No, I'm not. I said quickly. His eyes furrowed this time. He knew full well that I was hiding something. I swallowed hard, trying to hide my sudden panic. I had to come up with something and I needed to do it fast. He suddenly grabbed my wrist, causing me to yelp as he pulled me forward a bit. My stomach knotted when he saw the blood on my hand. He just stared at it for a second before he looked at me. He didn't say anything. I shifted my eyes away once I felt his tongue against my hand. His grip tightened on my wrist. This is your blood, Chloe. What happened? I could tell that he was beginning to get mad. Of course he would be. I just lied to him. I chewed the inside on my lip, knowing full well that there was no way I was going to be able to get out of this without being punished. I fell. I muttered quietly. Master's eyes fixed into an annoyed glare as he let go of my wrist. Oh yeah? On what? What the hell was in that hallway that you could have cut yourself on enough to make you bleed? He hissed. I stuttered. I literally couldn't think of anything to say to him. He was already mad and I really didn't want to make it worse. I found myself leaning back as he predatorily leaned towards me. It was nothing, it was all I managed to say. His eyes narrowed even more at my words. I bet it was, Chloe, his voice was low. I glanced down worriedly at my side as he placed his hand onto the bed near my hip. Only then did I realize that in the process of leaning back, my shirt lifted up enough to spot some of the blood. Master paused once he followed my gaze. On instinct, I quickly went to pull down my shirt, only to have him grab my wrist once more. Part of the anger in his eyes was gone, replaced with concern. Both of us froze as soon as he lifted my shirt enough to see the fang marks. His eyes widened as his pupils turned to slits, the way all vampires did when they were beyond mad. Who the hell did this? I was too frozen in fear to speak. What could I even say? The truth would get me killed and lying again was starting to seem like the same fate. I jumped as he met eyes with me, impatiently waiting for an answer. I don't know. I spoke. I refused to let the tears that were threatening to fall appear. The last thing I needed was for him to get mad at me for crying too. Chloe. He spoke my name like it was a warning. I really don't. I said, it was just some random vampire that attacked me in the hallway. He didn't believe me. I wouldn't have believed me either. He released my shirt and returned his full attention to me. I would have seen you if they attacked you in the hallway. He was clearly annoyed. Right. I feel like his voice wasn't fully showing how mad he was. A gasp ripped from my throat when he grabbed my collar, pulling me close enough that his face was right by my ear. I'm going to ask you again, Chloe. Who did this? He spoke as if he was challenging me to say I don't know again. If you want to lie to me again, go ahead, but I can't promise that nothing will happen to you if you do. I didn't say anything. I couldn't say anything without getting hurt in one way or the other. So instead, I just stayed silent, letting the fear of what Master was going to do to me sink in. No response, here? He asked. Still I stayed silent. Master sighed. What a shame. I really didn't think that I'd have to do this to you for a while, but, within a split second, I was standing on the edge of the bed, only being held up by one of his arms around my back. Master's other hand gripped my hair as his teeth scraped the column of my neck. I don't need a pet that doesn't obey the simple rule of answering a question once it's been asked. I froze as I felt his breaths against my neck. No. Not again. I could feel my breaths begin to speed up. I didn't want to die because of this. Nico, please. I'll stop once you tell me what I want to know. He said. It wasn't worth it. Either way, I was going to die, so it didn't really matter at this point. I'd much rather die to my own master than Xander. That thought involuntarily changed the second I felt the sting of his fangs against my neck. The words left my mouth before I had a chance to stop them. Xander. It was Xander. Nico's POV. The room went still as soon as she spoke his name. I felt a low growl escape my throat as I dropped Chloe back onto the bed. Of course it was Xander. Who else would it have been? He would be the only one with the guts to do it, and the hope that he could get away with it. I almost found it funny that he thought he was going to get away with it. I quickly turned on my heels, storming my way to the door. I was going to throw that son of a bitch out of his own window for touching my stuff. She's my pet, and yet he felt the need to take my stuff. What I wasn't expecting was for Chloe to bolt in front of me and hold herself against the door, preventing me from exiting the room without moving her. What the hell are you doing? I asked. She was scared, terrified even, so what the hell was she doing getting herself into more trouble? Her body was shaking, both from fear and from overexerting her body. She shouldn't even be trying this given her current condition. She didn't even answer my question, just fearfully barricaded the door. I could move her, but I really didn't want to make her condition any worse. Please. Don't. Is all she managed to say. My eyes furrowed even further. Why the hell would she want to keep me from beating the everlasting hell out of Xander? If anything, she should want me to. Get out of the way, Chloe. I warned. She didn't. She was being brave because she was petrified. She flinched as I took yet another step forward, squeezing her eyes shut. Please Nico, or if you're mad, just take it out on me. Hurt me all you want, but please don't tell Xander, she begged quietly. Her words caught me by surprise for a moment. What the hell could Xander have done that was scaring her more than her own master does? Imperfectly aware of how capable he is of terrifying humans, but she isn't his pet. He doesn't control her, I do, so what is she so afraid of? If I were to force her away from the door, judging by how heavy her breaths were right now and how hard her heart was beating with a lack of blood, she would probably pass out from panic. And that's pretty much the last thing I needed right now. I sighed, kneeling down a bit so I didn't look as intimidating. Chloe, look at me. She did eventually, fear still stricken in her eyes. Tell me what he said to you. I spoke a bit calmer. He had to have said something to her to make her act like this. Actions alone couldn't have caused this. He obviously threatened her with something, but I wanted to know what exactly he planned on putting her through. Her eyes went wide before they shifted to the side, like she was trying to decide whether she should tell me or not. That's an order. I added. She inhaled a long breath. He said that he was going to kill me if I told you what happened. It was my turn for my eyes to go wide. I honestly don't even know why I was surprised. That's totally something he would say. Especially to my pet. He was fully aware of how pissed I'd be if I found out, but he knew that I'd find out eventually. And of course he just had to take advantage of my already anxious little pet. I know that it's not my place to ask, but please, don't tea. I want tea. She was surprised by my words. Really? She asked, relief very evident in her voice. I just nodded. I want to tell him I know. Not tonight, at least. She doesn't need the stress of that added onto everything else that's happened to her today. And he can sleep as soundly as he would like, thinking that he got away with it. I'll just simply bring it up another time. Unlike Xander, I actually have some sort of self-restraint. But there was no way I was just going to let him get away with this unscathed. He could try to kill her whenever he wants, but he'll only be trying in vain. Chloe visually relaxed against the door as her adrenaline wore off. Thank you, she spoke quietly. I only nodded, standing back up to my original height. She did, however, shrink back when I stepped in front of her and knelt down there. She probably thought that I was going to punish her for lying to me. She lied out of fear for her own life. It's not even worth punishment. I lifted up her shirt a bit, taking another look at the blooded bite mark. That arsehole didn't he even stop the bleeding. It's like he wanted me to find out. I sighed again, releasing her shirt and moved to remove her collar. I'll have to tend to that bite. He only drank from you, right? Nothing else? I know that he didn't have her with him for that long, but who knows what that sadistic freak could have done to her in that amount of time. Judging by what he does to Doe. I stopped my thoughts as Chloe slowly nodded. Good. I stood up again, her collar in my hand. You're sleeping with me tonight, I said as I walked towards the bathroom. Her eyes shot wide open. Why? I glanced back at her. Why can't she just be happy that she gets to sleep in a bed? She doesn't need to know that Xander is the only other person in this entire castle that has access to my room. I'll have to remove his thumbprint from my door tomorrow, as well as put in Chloe's. Because I said so.